All right, go ahead.
All right, we're going to go ahead and start tonight's July 16th meeting of Parks, Recreation, Waterfront, and Resiliency for July. We have a very long agenda, so we're going to have some ground rules so that we can get through most of the material. But first, we're going to handle a couple of committee things. First, we have a new member, Troy Velez. I see him on the screen. So let's welcome Troy. He's now a full board member for Parks and Waterfront. Welcome, Troy. It's going to be an interesting meeting, but nice way to get your feet wet. Also like to thank Michael, who is running production on this meeting. He has done it for every meeting, and it requires a lot of work because he has to pay attention to all of what is going on in the chat and who needs to get on and the phones, in addition to trying to pay attention to the meeting itself. As he mentioned, we're using the chat box for attendance and not for comment. Those comments in the chat will go to me and Michael, where we can take attendance. If you have not signed in, we ask you to do so in the chat box. Also, I want to thank Ryan Gilliam, who is the secretary. She will be taking notes. This time I'm introducing her and I gave her a little bit of warning, but I appreciate it, Ryan. We do not have any resolutions planned, although there's a lot of information that's going to be presented. First thing I'd like to do is approve the minutes from last month, and this is the way we take attendance for committee members. Michael, you probably need to unmute Ryan so she can ask for people to say yes or no to the minutes.
Hold on. I'm going to temporarily give everyone the ability to do it while we're doing roll call, because it's going to be easier that way.
I ask everyone to respect that, so only those who are being called, please unmute yourself. We want to try and keep this meeting as smooth and easy as we possibly can. So Ryan, you can call the names for the committee members.
Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Kay Webster.
Yep.
David Adams. David Adams. Euron Altman.
Yes.
Carlin Chan. Carlin Chan.
Yes, here.
Ryan Gillum here. Valentina Jones. Valentina Jones.
Here, sorry, here.
Michael Marino.
Yes.
Carolyn Ratcliffe. I see you. You unmute. Want to say here? Here. Great. Robin Chattel. Robin Chattel. Josephine Velez.
Here.
And Troy Velez.
Here.
That's it.
Dave Adams, if you're on your phone, which you usually join us by phone, it's *6 to unmute yourself. You should be able to.
David Adams.
He might not be here because he usually joins by phone and
Ryan, was there anyone else we may have missed who may be on the phone and not able to unmute themselves?
I just have David Adams and Robin Chattel.
Okay, so we're going to continue. First, some committee issues. There are a lot of things going on, obviously, along the waterfront. So for committee members, it is likely that we will meet in August to handle a couple of items. Just for meeting purposes, the link is provided on the calendar. Just like if we were looking to see where our meeting is, the same information is provided on the CB3 website. And it's also the most update because things tend to change. So I'd always recommend going to the website to get the information about the meeting. One of the things we're probably going to discuss at the August meeting is the Brooklyn-Montgomery Coastal Resiliency Project. The community, we discussed it at exec last night briefly, but basically the projects along the waterfront and two bridges, or also known as the Brooklyn Montgomery Coastal Resiliency project, had some issues with funding, but it appears now it's back on track and that construction should start at the end of this month. The community board, along with a number of other neighborhood groups, wrote letters, and we received a response that they were going to continue this, so it's pretty good news. They are coming to the board in August to talk about the project, because we left off at design, and we're going to restart that community engagement sometime in August. The first thing we're going to discuss, well, there is a committee member who wants to speak. So Val, if you want to unmute yourself, we're going to give you 2 minutes to speak.
You say Val?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Somewhat going in terms of what you had said, in terms of, I'm speaking on behalf of the Lower East Side Power Partnership. We wrote a letter to Council Member Brannon, and we wrote in support of the Brooklyn Bridge to Montgomery Street Coastal Resiliency Project, advocating for the City Council to support the project in every way. The HESCO barriers placed in Smith houses and Lands End 2, both within boundaries of Brooklyn Bridge and Montgomery, is a constant reminder to the residents of the present protection and that more needs to be done. Our understanding is that work on BCR project has been paused as of April. LESPP advocates utilization of every measure possible for work on BMCR project to resume. And as you stated, we got a response back from them, basically saying that they will be ready to discuss further with the community and communicate an updated schedule after they'll be resuming design work. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. For those who have looked at the agenda on the website, we're going to change things just slightly. First, I want to make sure that we have the teams that are ready to present available. So the first team that would go up would be Department of Sanitation to talk or give an update on the staging, the TLC staging at Basketball City. I don't know who's here for that.
Joshua Goodman, how are you?
Joshua, okay, how are you doing, Joshua?
Chair, thank you very much for having me. You ready for me to go ahead, or are we continuing through the roll first?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the opportunity as always. And just for those of you I haven't had the chance to work with before, I'll just quickly introduce myself. I know we've got a full agenda, but I'm here really in 3 capacities. The first is as an assistant commissioner at the Department of Sanitation. The second is as a public affairs official on the city's emergency food operation. And the third is as a CB3 resident. I live at the corner of Market and Madison. I see many of you while I'm out walking my dog every morning, so intimately familiar with the issue. Just want to provide an update on what's going on at Basketball City. I know some of you are very familiar with this and some maybe not quite as much. So I'll give a 60-second overview of where we're at now, where we've gone over the last few weeks, and what to expect going forward. At Basketball City, we're staging 1 of 11 sites from which we're delivering meals to homebound New Yorkers. This is the program that you may have heard about, where about 18,000 taxi drivers are coming to these 11 sites around the city, picking up meals for people who can't go out due to the pandemic and delivering free food from the city right to them. The site at Basketball City just passed 7 million meals this week delivered. So this is a really interesting program. It's a really cool program. It's the kind of innovative thing that we're excited to be doing during a challenging time, because it gets food to people in need, people who can't go out, but it also provides work for the taxi drivers, right? Nobody's taking a taxi right now. So this has kept these taxi drivers employed and paid for the work of helping people. That said, what challenges have we faced? This is one of, as I said, 11 sites, but it's certainly one of the ones in the most dense residential communities. They are all over the city. You know, they're in Flushing, they're on the Upper West Side. There's a large one in Kingsbridge in the Bronx. But, you know, as we all know, our neighborhood has narrow streets, right? And you may have seen in the early days of the pandemic through perhaps April or May, taxi drivers lined up because they wanted to get this work in the morning, right? And more at this site than at any other, we had drivers lining up at 2 or 3 in the morning because they wanted to make sure that they got one of the routes. You know, it's a finite amount of work, and I certainly understand that. So based on community feedback, we instituted a number of new policies that I think have largely eliminated the problem. And then I'll talk about what challenges still remain. I don't want to act as if it's completely resolved. The first thing that we did was we had an outside vendor build an entirely new scheduling app for the drivers. The drivers previously was first come, first serve. So, you know, in the spirit of competition, they started getting there in the middle of the night to make sure they got a route. We built this app that the drivers used to sign up, where they sign up for a specific 1 hour time slot. And if they're not able to sign up the night before, they don't have a route at this site, so there's no reason for them to come down. This is something that made a huge difference, where the drivers still, you know, occasionally someone will show up at 5 in the morning and TLC police say to them, why are you here? You either signed up already for a route or you didn't. There's no reason for you to be here this early. And we've gotten rid of this issue where there were hundreds and hundreds of cars lining up to try to get work, not knowing if they were going to have a route or not. We also moved some of the loading sites from Pier 36 to Pier 42 to try to create a little bit of additional capacity. We added about 80 additional cars at Pier 42 at a time. So that gets several hundred off the street over the course of the hours this program is active. We reconfigured what was happening at Pier 36. We opened up an additional part of the south side of Pier 36 to get another 40 cars in there at one time. So all told, we were able to get additional cars inside the facilities and off the streets. We also, we're very fortunate at this program to have the support of the National Guard. They do a lot of the loading of the food into the cars. We were able to work with the National Guard to increase capacity so they can get the cars in and out faster. So that said, we've still had a couple of challenges. The site is closed on Saturdays because this is maybe more information than folks need, but the Basketball City site handles a lot of almost all of the kosher meal delivery around the city. If you sign up for this program and you say, I need kosher food, it comes from Basketball City. So that means it's not open Saturdays because we don't do kosher food deliveries on the Sabbath. So as a result of that, we sometimes have a little more capacity Friday and Sunday because it's closed Saturday, so we got to make up a little bit of the extra. So we've added extra enforcement agents. It's TLC and it's New York City Emergency Management enforcement agents who are there early, making sure that the drivers are not idling, making sure that they're not blocking traffic, making sure that if they are there lined up, they're in their cars, they're not hanging out on the sidewalk making noise. We've also opened restrooms for the drivers, which I know has improved some of the local sanitation issues. So that's where we're at now. And I appreciate that, you know, a handful of community members have let us know in real time whenever there is an issue. I know we've got the chat on private mode, but I would love to leave my contact info because we've had an issue where sometimes we'll hear from a community member on, you know, Thursday, hey, I was out there last Monday and it was pretty bad. There's not a lot we can do at that point, although we do appreciate the feedback. I'd love to give folks my cell and email. If you see a problem on the site, I'm right here in the neighborhood. Let us know in real time and we will take care of it right away. So I'll post it for you privately in the chat, Mr. Chair, and if you'd like to share it with everyone, please feel free.
Sure, if we could post that now and Michael can send it out. We're gonna go with some questions and I certainly have a few because I'm one of the folks who witnesses those cars at 5 o'clock in the morning and seen a whole bunch of fights and a lot of other issues. It's generally calmed down, but there are still some issues. But I'm gonna give the committee members a chance to speak on this. I think I saw Troy's hand raised. I don't know if that was for this issue.
That is for this issue.
Okay, go ahead, Troy.
I have a couple of questions. I have two questions. One is, I'm not sure if you take care of this issue, Josh, but the issue with the boxes being left in buildings, in the lobby of buildings. That's a problem in NYCHA and NYCHA
Yes.
housing.
I can speak to that, certainly. So for folks who may not be familiar, this is separate from the drivers lining up, but the issue is when the food was delivered, we had a problem with drivers not taking it to the door. And this was particularly a bad problem, you're absolutely right, sir, in NYCHA. And the drivers would sometimes say to us, look, I want to deliver it to the door, but the bell doesn't work, you know, which of course we know is a significant problem in NYCHA. So what we've done is we've added cell phone numbers to all of the orders. And we've made it clear to the driver that unless you can provide a cell phone photo proof that you dropped it at the door, your delivery is incomplete and you're not getting paid. So the problem has improved significantly. Once in a while, I hear from someone who says, hey, I'm a tenants association president at, you know, any development anywhere in the city. I'm here in the lobby and they just left a bunch of boxes. But now we've instituted better tracking, so we can immediately say back to that TA president or that building manager, give me the number that's written on the box, we'll tell you what store it's supposed to go to. So that said, it's still supposed to go to the door. That shouldn't be the building management's problem. It shouldn't be the TA president's problem. But because we've told the drivers that they won't get paid for incomplete deliveries, we think it's mostly gotten better. But again, you've got my contact info. If it ever happens, let us know. We'll handle it right away.
Just one other question, Trevor. Is there any opportunity for some of the youth from the Lower East Side to go and participate in this program?
It's a great question. I know that the deliveries have to be done by people who have a TLC license. They can use whatever vehicle they want, but they've got to have a license. I wonder what other opportunities there might be. I mean, we would love to include local youth to the extent that we can. I'm not sure whether I don't want to say whether there are union rules involved, any reason. I mean, at the distribution sites, it's lots and lots of city staff plus the National Guard. I'd be happy to reach out to the emergency management leadership who are running the site and say, do you have use for whether it's either volunteers or seasonal workers?
Thank you.
Of course, thank you, sir.
Michael, I don't see any other hands.
There's no other hands from community board members. There's a hand from somebody on the phone, but I think that's a holdover from the attendance that we were trying to do.
Okay. Joshua, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions, and I appreciate you leaving the information in there so we can get real-time complaints and responses back. I guess I'll start from where we are today and work my way back since it's a little easier to discuss. The program, how long is this expected to last? Because obviously there are still situations where we see cars wrapped around, and the issue still is that they don't have a bathroom. So you have hundreds of cars wrapping around a block with no bathroom, so they tend to leave urine and other things outside their car along with trash. And at some mornings, they all have their cars running. No one turns their car off, so there's still exhaust fumes. And as you know, this is a COVID-19 neighborhood. So last thing we want to see. So I understand that the good that's doing the feed, but when the good sort of has a bad to it, people don't view it that way.
Look, I completely agree. And I think both of those are unacceptable situations. So there's a few questions in there. So there is a bathroom, there's actually two, open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We're hoping that if folks are not there overnight, there's no reason for them not to use those restrooms, right? Yeah, maybe someone shows up at 5:30, but they can wait until 6 a.m. when we unlock the restroom, right? And I will say, would welcome the board's thoughts on this. We're actually totally open to making that restroom 24 hours, but we don't have the staff capacity to supervise it overnight. So obviously there's risks involved in that, right? If we leave it unlocked at night, there's nobody there to check, anybody could go in and use it. If you decide that that's worth the risk, we're completely fine leaving it open overnight. But we've decided so far for security reasons to lock it from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. But hopefully drivers are only there during those hours. The idling, we have told them that we will issue tickets, and that is a great example of something where if you see it, let me know in real time. Our enforcement agents will walk right down the block and say, turn the car engine off or here's a ticket. Obviously, we hope it doesn't come to that. And the city has a large anti-idling campaign. So definitely don't want that to happen. And it's TLC police, it's in emergency management. And 5th Precinct is obviously aware of this, but so far it's been handled in 7th, I'm sorry. Yeah, I live in the 5th. So. And then on your last question about timing, I think that the program will continue long-term because as we reopen, our seniors are gonna be the last people to get back to normal. This site, it's hard to say. We had actually closed 2 as demand has sort of evened out. We had one large one at Thomas Jefferson Rec Center, which is at 112th Street and 1st Avenue. That site, we were able to close it down as capacity picked up elsewhere. Basketball City is a good site because it's so large. I mean, of course, every story in New York is ultimately a real estate story. Where can you put a couple hundred cars at a time? Certainly, I would expect it to continue operating through the fall. And if these problems are not resolved by then, which I know they mostly are, but if we continue to see this, we can talk then about whether it makes sense to shift some of the capacity elsewhere.
Okay, and I'll follow up with you in a separate conversation because I really wanted to keep this as informational, but that's also a large space for the community. And I know that the city is looking for ways to keep kids socially distant, and that is one space that could handle a lot of kids, especially if we're going to be talking about daycare or summer camps or other things. So the way how we're going to use this space, especially in a space-starved neighborhood like ours. But we'll talk about that at another time.
Great. Well, and I'll just say I really do encourage anyone to let me know about any problems in real time. Really pride myself on being a good neighbor and on being responsive to the board members. So anything I can do, let me know at any time.
Sure. Michael, did you see anyone else? I don't see anyone else.
No other hands.
All right, thank you, Joshua. I don't know if you're going to stay on for part of the ESCR. I don't know if there's another rep from sanitation. I'm not sure. But whatever, I think whoever's supposed to be here is going to be here. But thank you for giving us the information on that.
It's my pleasure, sir.
And if you have any updates, we'd surely like to know. You can email us in real time also. Put the information in there and we'll pass it out to everyone else.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Before we let you go, Josh, so 917 number ending in 151, you keep raising your hand. Is it about this or something else? You're unmuted. You just muted yourself. Hit *6 again and unmute yourself.
We can hear you.
We hear you on the touch tone, but we can't hear you speaking.
All right, Michael, we're going to move on.
All right.
And if you could mute that, I can hear the background noise. So we're going to mute and lower that hand.
Okay.
All right, next up, we have a series of presentations that are going to consume a lot of time. So I had mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, that we really haven't heard a lot about the ESCR project since COVID began, and we were obviously moving along pretty swiftly with this, and COVID has changed a lot of things, not just this meeting, but in the world itself. So this is mostly for information, so we can get as much information as we can. There's a lot to digest here. There are a lot of questions that are going to be answered. I'm going to ask for everyone's patience so we can get as much information as we can. This is not going to be the only meeting about this topic. We've been meeting about ESCR every single month for what seems like it had to be at least a year, maybe even longer than that. And we will continue to do so. So there will be opportunities to ask questions. But since we have not heard from this team in quite some time, we're really going to limit this to a presentation and some general questions so we can get an understanding of where this project is right now. So I'm going to give the ESCR team, or DDC, a chance to introduce themselves. They are going to give this presentation, which does not include the ESCR project itself, as well as the emergency management interim flood protection presentation. I'm going to ask Q, are you on?
Q is on, and he's been given co-host ability so he can share the screen to show the slides.
Okay, Q.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Mike, if you want to mute my name on my computer, that's fine. I'm talking through my phone, so. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen.
For those of you who are
Can you all see
following,
that?
Yes, we can see it.
Q, just one quick question. This is the same one that's on the website?
Yes.
So for folks who are on their computer or on your phone or a tablet, you could pull up the same presentation on your computer by going to the CB3 website and looking under the calendar, go to Parks, Waterfront, and Resiliency Committee, and you can pull up the exact same presentation. Q, you can proceed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Trevor, Susan, Mike, all other members, thank you so much. As Trevor mentioned, it's been a while considering COVID and the project process in the past few months that we haven't really provided too much details, and we're hoping to give you folks a better understanding of what's going on with the project. And as Trevor mentioned, we'll be coming back regularly from now on to get more information out there and be able to be available for questions and moving towards the construction. So just for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Q Amiri. I'm with DDC, the Coastal Resiliency Unit in the Infrastructure Division at DDC. I'm here with a host of my colleagues within the agency and our other city partner agencies, and our consultants from the HNPV LERO team. That's a joint venture that has come on board to help us shepherd the project through the construction phase for the next several years, for the next 5 years. So I'm going to go through the presentation. Hopefully I'll be able to preemptively answer a lot of the questions that we received so far from many different avenues, but I think Trevor said we'll have a general or maybe a short Q&A at the end that we can discuss. If we don't get to any questions, as usual, please feel free to reach out to me or Faye Lee directly. You have our contacts. You can reach out through the website. A number of you folks are a member of the Community Advisory Group, the CAG, and you can reach out through Pratt Institute. That's a facilitator. We'll talk about that a little bit. And obviously through elected officials and the community board committee members here too. Happy to discuss that afterwards too. So what we've heard so far in the past several months, especially since COVID has started, unfortunately, I just wanted to give an idea, and I'll talk about these bullet items during the presentation. But overall, we've received a lot of questions about the current project status and what the timeline is, where the project is so far in the past several months, what's been going on. Will the park, East River Park, and all the other parks in the CB6 area, will they remain open for the summer season to have access to the additional open space, considering the COVID restrictions that we're dealing with right now, which the answer is yes, and I'll talk about that. Also, we'll give you an idea or present a little more details about our outreach and engagement strategies for the next few months until construction, and also for the next 5 years of construction phase. And after I'm done, our colleagues at the emergency management will be presenting their interim flood protection measures analysis that you've all been waiting for, and we've been able to coordinate. So jumping right in, this is just an introductory overview slide. I'll skip over and talk about it here. So I do want to say, first, thank you to all the community members, everybody being patient with us, working with us. I know this is a major project. There's a lot of unknowns in the future, especially with the current circumstances. But as of now, just so everybody knows, the project has not been impacted or delayed by COVID as of today. The project's design, the procurement activities, the engagement efforts, the construction timeline, all of that is still moving forward as we had planned. That said, we still need some time to understand the overall impact of COVID on the city's major construction projects, such as this ESCR project, to be able to figure out what that really means for our project schedule. So as we all know, this pandemic has been extremely disruptive and unpredictable. So as we stand today, again, everything is on schedule, on budget, and we're moving forward. And we'll be sure to provide detailed updates moving forward. So construction is going to commence this fall. I'll talk more details about that on the right side of this column that you see on the screen, but we had planned to start our pretty much substantial construction in fall. There was a little package, a smaller package of early package that we named it that was planned to commence in spring. However, due to at the request of the community, we were able to defer that to the spring, so we could have that area open and working with Lower East Side Ecology Center later in fall instead of spring, and that has not been impacted by COVID. And just because we received questions on that, I wanted to be clear that that was deferred proactively by the project team, by DDC, at the request of the community, and we were able to accommodate that without having to impact the rest of the project schedule that comes after that. So on the right side of this page, just a general overview. The project is broken up into 4 different packages, different bid packages. You often hear us saying PA2, PA1, PC, so I just want to give a quick explanation of what these are and the timelines that are associated with these. The early package is, that's what was planned for spring, that got deferred to early fall, sometime in September range, and we're coordinating with the city team, with our Deputy Mayor's Office, DSNY, with Parks. There's a big group behind that to help with relocating the Lower East Side Ecology Center's compost yard operations to the new site, so we can start the project construction after that. And as part of that, another small piece of that is tree transplants. A number of trees are currently being assessed and identified to be transplanted into the community from the East River Park into the community, and we'll be able to provide more details about that too. Project Area 2 is essentially CV6, Community Board 6 area up at the northern piece of the project. And I put this in this order because of the timeline. Right now, we've gone through the procurement process, and just to clarify that too, since January, we've started the pre-construction procurement process for this project. And that's partly why we've been a little more on the quiet side for the past several months, because there really hasn't been major project activities. It's all been contract development and reviewing and approving the specifications, working with our program management team, HNTV Lero, and trying to get these bid packages out. So this is where we are today. The Project Area 2 has been set out to bids. The lowest bidder was selected, and the process for these bid packages, typically, just to give everybody an idea, is that once these packages are prepared and released for bidding, and all the bids come in, the lowest bidder is selected for review by DDC with the help of our HNTV Lero consultant team. After that, a bid analysis and verification is done, which goes into a pre-award meeting. And from there, if everything lines up and the lowest bidder is actually selected and verified, then we award the contract, we register the contract, and a notice to proceed is issued. The notice to proceed, I also want to explain, there might have been some confusion in the past with this. Notice to proceed letter that DDC issues to contractors, and this goes for any project out there, not just specific to our project. The notice to proceed is a statement to inform the contractor that they are approved for this specific scope, for this specific time frame. That doesn't mean they can start at any time that they want. Their first start date, shovel in the ground, still has to be coordinated and authorized by DDC. So if you hear or see any notice to proceed out there that the dates may not line up with what we are saying here, that's because that's just a green light to the contractor to inform them that they've been approved. There's a lot of legwork, a lot of mobilization, a lot of coordination that has to happen before we actually start construction, and that's a collective decision with DDC and our city agencies as partners and our consultant team. And once we determine that exact time frame for each one of these areas, we'll definitely come back and inform the community here through the community board meetings, through the elected officials' offices and the community advisory group, all the avenues that we have, obviously the website and other methods, and let everybody know well in advance before construction starts on any area of this project. So once the notice to proceed is issued, for the project to the contractor, we go into a pre-construction meeting. After that, DDC gives the authorization to the contractor, a date is determined, and construction starts from that point. And because right now we haven't reached those steps yet, at this point, we're just, for Project Area 2, we're just at the sort of pre-award meeting step right now, and we haven't awarded the contract, this scope to the contractor just yet. That's why we can't provide an exact time frame or date for start of construction for any of these packages just yet, but the overall sort of targeted time frame for Project Area 2 and Community Board 6 area is early fall. And moving on to Project Area 1, which is right behind Project Area 2 and hasn't been, that Project Area 1 is a couple of steps behind in the procurement phase from Project Area 2, and that's currently targeted for late fall. And the fourth component of that is the parallel conveyance. That includes the sewer and drainage improvements throughout the whole project site, which encompasses the whole project footprint in Community Board 3 and 6. And that's the final one that will come after PA1. The time frame hasn't been determined yet, and we're estimating sometime in the late fall to early winter time that might be breaking ground for that piece. And again, just bear with us while we move along with our sort of behind the scenes pre-construction activities. Every time it's like peeling an onion. Every time that we reach a mini milestone behind the scenes, we'll be able to provide more details on construction time frame and the specific construction areas for the project. And I also want to remind everybody, back in December and January, we presented a general construction phasing diagram to both community boards and residents in the area that was prepared by our consultant team, HNTV and Lero. And they've been able to determine that level of detail. However, to take it to the next step, we need to have the contractors on board. And one of the very first deliverables by the contractor is for them to propose or issue their construction schedule to us. And once we get the construction schedule, we do our review. There's meetings and discussions, obviously, and from that point, we will be able to determine exactly the date for the start of construction. So we'll come back with more details as we move along. And again, I'll be sure to provide well advanced notice, and we have a host of different avenues that we'll be able to communicate with folks that I'll share in the next slides, so everybody knows before anything happens in the area. This slide, this is also a general overview. Not many details still available for this subject, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit. I'm going to turn it to our consultants, HNTV Lero here, to quickly speak to this slide. This has been just as any other construction project. Construction operations, noise, air quality, site safety, construction site safety, all of that is always a concern for any resident and any project team, regardless of the location or project type. And we want to be sure that everybody understands that will be following all the regulations and local laws and codes that we have to require, and we want to we'll be sure to provide the information and these plans once they're developed to the community, so everybody's aware of what is required from the contractor and what they need to comply with, and ongoing regular report updates to the community with our monitoring plans with regards to noise and air quality and our dust control plans. With that, I'll just give it for a couple minutes to John Lynch. He's one of our project managers from HNTV on our consultant side. John, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself or if Mike has to do that.
Sure, no, I was able to unmute myself, Q. Can everybody hear me?
There you go.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name's John Lynch with HNTV Lero. We're the program manager and construction manager for each of the 4 projects Q just went through. So we're providing resident engineer and inspection services to oversee the contractors on each of the 4 contracts. So just briefly going through a few bullets here as we get ready for construction to start in the fall. The contractor is required to submit a site safety plan, which would include COVID, as well as a bunch of other things like noise quality and air quality. So we have to be compliant with New York City's codes for those. We also have sites, project-specific specifications in the contract to monitor for noise and air quality, as well as maintain dust control. So we're really the ones overseeing to make sure the contractor doesn't make too much noise, create too much dust. We'll have plans for each of those from the contracts. And finally, and the proper emissions for air quality. And then the last bullet here, talking about overnight construction, we're going to minimize night work as much as possible. In some cases, we need to do work at night because they were closing lanes of the FDR Drive, for example. But we're going to be monitoring that so as to keep that to a minimum. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to go through, Q, but I think that's pretty much it.
Thanks, John. Yeah, again, we'll come back definitely with more details on this, with the night closures, with all these plans once they're developed. So another requirement for the contractors to submit their, to develop these plans and submit it to us for review collectively with DDC and HNTB Liro. We'll be reviewing and approving, and at that point, these sort of the criteria and requirements will be set, and we'll be able to share more details at that stage. So again, please bear with us. This is keep in mind it's like an onion. We're peeling every layer as we move along, and if we don't have information available, I just ask that everybody please be patient with us, and once we reach that juncture, we'll be happy to explain and provide more details. So moving on, that was our sort of project status update. And if there are any specific questions after this, we can take that. But I want to move on to our community engagement strategy for the next 5 years of this construction, what we have in store. This is a high-level summary list of what we're working on right now that we wanted to share with you. A lot of this is still under development, and just wanted to let everybody know what's going on, and I'll go through every single one of these and explain more. So like I said, with COVID, we haven't really had any direct impacts to our overall construction, to our overall project construction. Our project funding is still committed in place. We still have our funding in place for community engagement scope. The timeline, the schedule, everything is business as usual. Just as we had planned, everything is moving along. Between January through early fall, mid-fall has always been our sort of estimated timeline for procurement phase, which we are in sort of halfway right now. And the only sort of, at this point, the only COVID impact that we are sort of assessing is our public engagement activities and efforts. And here we are virtually via Zoom. Otherwise, we would have been in person at the community board meeting under normal circumstances. So COVID has really made us rethink and reassess our engagement strategies that we had in mind for to kick off construction prior to fall construction, and also during construction, whether it was street fairs or in-person meetings, one-on-ones, community board, or whatnot. So we're taking a look at our overall strategy and trying to come up with creative ways to still deliver our strategy and tasks that we had in mind without having to sacrifice the quality or sacrifice any of our engagement efforts. So that sort of mentality has worked its way into the following bullet points that I'll talk about. The second bullet point on the left is the community advisory group. I'm sure many of you know, some may not be aware of this, but a community advisory group was formed recently in the recent few months, and a number of residents, representatives of a lot of complexes, housings, and businesses are on the membership list of this CAG, as we call it, Community Advisory Group. The kickoff meeting for this group was in January 17th. We, per the mayor's commitment letter, we have committed to fund all the expenses with regards to this community advisory group. Part of that is to have a facilitator who is Pratt Center to help us with and the CAG group navigate through the construction phase with regards to our engagement strategies. So kickoff was in June 17th, just about a month ago, and we provided a high-level presentation, more or less what you're seeing here, not anything less and probably not anything more, but a little more details have become available since then that I'm able to share with you folks today, and we'll make sure to loop in the rest of the CAG members. If you have any questions with regards to that, I would defer everybody to Pratt Center. Happy to put you folks in contact. And our goal is to still maintain our presence with the community boards and other avenues that we had during the design phase, as well as the CAG group. So please feel free to reach out, whether through Pratt Center or other avenues. We are updating our website. Currently, the website covers the design phase predominantly, and we're expanding the website to include additional tabs and drop downs and sections that we could utilize during construction. We're adding a little more background and history to the project website. The website address, the link, the overall layout, everything will remain the same. There's still a contact box, a contact area that you can reach us. It will be connected to an online web-based tool that I'll talk about in the next couple minutes. And our goal is, same thing with social media as promised. Our goal is to roll out our new website and our social media accounts with our first round of social media posts at some point during this summer in advance of construction. So bear with us. We're still coordinating the website update with our IT department and the rest of the city team, and going through that coordination and step-by-step update, and we'll be back and we can give you a demonstration in one of the upcoming community board meetings once we go live with that. Communication materials, just as any other project at DDC, will have a wide range of communication materials. It's a big package of different published materials. We're hoping to establish a newsletter for this project, most likely quarterly newsletter. We've looked at many other projects, major infrastructure projects, spoke to a lot of those project teams, and came up with this sort of what we see here. Some of it was inspired by other successful projects that have been going on in New York. Many people have found the newsletter to be very helpful, so feel free to give us some feedback on that. I think a quarterly newsletter that will summarize all the information that would be presented at the CAG meetings or at the community board meetings on the website with some pictures and stuff. It might be helpful to folks. There would be advisories and notifications. All of these would be translated to multiple languages, and we'll show you an example of these documents once we get to that point and we're ready to share that in the next few months. Again, another item with the goal of rolling out, at least rolling out the templates before construction, so it's ready to be used once we hit construction phase. Interpretive resiliency signage. This has been on a separate design track since late fall, early winter last year. We're working on designing a system of dedicated interpretive signage to be installed throughout the project footprint. The goal here is to provide information on the resiliency infrastructure as a whole, also some individual elements that serve critical functions within the flood protection system. These signs, they're also intended to provide information on the independent flood protection components and how the systems function as part of the unified approach to this coastal resiliency project. And like I mentioned, the scope is on a separate design track, and we'll present the conceptual design at one of the upcoming community board meetings. Right now, our design team that many of you are familiar with, the AKRF team and their consultants are working on this, and we're hoping to provide a separate presentation at some point within the next few months before we finalize design, so we can collect feedback and get everybody's thoughts on that. So to the right side of this list, I want to really quickly talk about our MWD Section 3 goals. We have our consultant here that's joining us. I want to defer to her to give us a quick 2-minute introduction. But again, this is another item that's currently under development. We're working on hashing out the details, and we'll come back with more details to explain what the goals are, what the criteria is, what we're trying to do, and all that. Trang, are you on the call? Are you unmuted?
Who is that again, Q?
Can you hear me?
That would be, oh yes, go ahead.
Yep, this is Trang. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to give you a quick overview of what our plans are for the outreach on this program. So a little bit about me. I'm Trang Bowie from Bowie Studio, and we're an MWB firm and also a Section 3 firm, and we're based in the Lower East Side. Looking at the goals for this program, we've identified 3 general areas where we can maximize opportunities for MWB firms, Section 3 firms, and also local hiring opportunities. And it starts with the program management team with HNTB and Liro's JV, which they already brought into the program with over a dozen MWB firms, including myself. And we'll look at where the staffing needs and the sub-consulting opportunities might be for the program as it evolves. Once the general contracting teams are in place, we will also start working with those contractors and also the program management team to see where subcontracting opportunities can be utilized to work with the local community groups and see what local resources are already there in place to hire locally, and both individuals and firms. And then finally, working with the community outreach team, we would also try to find opportunities once the community engagement is underway, and depending on where COVID takes us, we could also do outreach in those areas, promoting local businesses to help, staff or supply services and equipment to the construction and the program management team. So we'll be working with you and any other local partners that are already on the ground to really leverage and cultivate the existing relationships we already have on the ground.
Great, thank you, Trang. And again, we'll come back with a lot more details on that, but I just wanted to share high-level information to let everybody know. The next bullet point is the community construction liaisons, as we refer to them as CCLs. This is another item that this program is being developed right now and trying to define the step-by-step and day-to-day process of the CCLs. This is a project component that's a standard practice for a lot of our DVC projects, and I think it's self-explanatory. They're meant to be liaison for the community during the construction phase. We will definitely have at least 2 CCLs to start with for the whole project footprint, and I'm sure many of you know project construction is typically a gradual process. As time goes by, the operation, the intensity of it increases. So for the first several months or maybe few months of the project, we may not need as many CCLs or as much support. But as we get closer to that sort of intensity, we're gearing up to be prepared for that. And if we need to add more CCLs, we'll look into that. But for the time being, we're starting with 2. And we'll definitely be sure to, we're bringing on CCLs that are bilingual to be able to communicate with a wider group of residents. So we'll come back and provide more details on that as well and explain what their role is, when and how they'll be available to everybody, and how they can be reached, and we'll present all that. The bullet here, web-based public inquiry tool, also the next 2, I have a separate slide focusing on these 3, so I'm going to jump ahead to the next slide, and I'll talk about these 3 bullet points. The web-based public inquiry tool this is actually a very exciting tool that we're all at DDC very happy and excited about. Our program management team, HNTB and Lero, I forgot to mention, you actually see their logo down below on the right side of the slide. They have developed this, they've been working with this tool for a number of their past construction projects, and it's been very successful and seems to be a very helpful tool for our project here. And essentially it's a inquiry management and response management system, and it helps us better manage and organize questions, concerns, and inquiries that come in, take it through a pipeline behind the scenes to make sure it's reaching the right person, collect the information and responses, and then go back through that pipeline to go reach the individual so we can respond to everybody in a timely manner and a more organized manner too. This tool is currently being developed. It has a wide range of features and capabilities, and we're trying to tailor it and customize it specifically to the needs of this project and our community and our community relations here. It will be available at the Community Information Center that I'll talk about in the next slide. The CCLs will have it on their tablets or phones. The community at large, anybody could access this on any Android or iPhone, iOS phone, any tablet. It has multiple languages that you can choose to translate, and it has you'll have the ability to either just open the site and pop in your question or concern and a couple of fields that may or may not be required, and submit that, or you can create an account and have that saved under your account, and every time you need to access this, you can log in and pick up where we left off. It's also going to be linked to our website, so once the new website, the updated website is done and rolled out, you'll see link to this tool. We'll be using this with our social media posts and responses. It has the ability to set up virtual meetings and events, sort of like a 3D virtual reality space. That's pretty cool. So we're looking into that as an alternative to the in-person meetings and events that we had in mind early on this year. Multiple languages I mentioned. And one of the biggest features is obviously you can opt in to receive communications via text message or email, or you can opt out of it. And those communication materials that I mentioned earlier, part of that package of notifications and advisories, street closures, anything like that, all of those, or any reports, all of that could be issued through this tool as well. So anybody who opts in to communications through this tool will be able to push out advisories and through mass emails or mass text messages to be sure we're reaching a wider net of the community members. We'll come back in the next few months before construction to provide a demonstration of this tool and walk everybody through it. It's fairly simple and intuitive, but stay tuned and we'll come back to show you how it works before construction starts, so everybody's familiar with how to navigate through it. Another item that we're very excited about that kind of had a curveball with COVID right now is the Community Information Center. So we were hoping to open a sort of a community center prior to construction at some point late summer, before construction, mid to late summer. That kind of hit a little curveball with COVID. Nonetheless, we're still working on it. The goal here is to, we've been assessing available commercial spaces in the project area. So the center could be used as a hub for project information and for in-person community engagement. Our goal is to have it staffed by at least 2 locally hired administrative folks, and the CCLs will be available there in person, either by appointment or through a rotating schedule. Also, wanted to mention that before I forgot, the CCLs will be based on the project site, construction site behind the fence, which is not obviously open or accessible by the public. However, we want to make sure this effort was one of the goals with this was to make sure these CCLs are accessible to the public and in person, and this center could become a hub for that matter. Also, this would serve as a space for us to host our stakeholder or community meetings or CAG meetings as needed. Any information session, we were hoping to reach out to the schools and partner with the local schools for field trips and use this space as an educational center with exhibits and posters, screens and whatnot. After all said and done, develop some sort of a system that we can offer this space back to the community pro bono, obviously, for any monthly membership meetings or community meetings that the community organizations might need, and we'll have to figure that system out too. The sort of criteria for finding this space was to look in an area that's halfway, centrally located halfway between Community Board 6 and Community Board 3 to be fair to all the residents in this project stretch. And we landed on Alphabet City area. That's what you see on the screen. We've looked at a number of spaces in February and March, right before COVID. That search effort has gone on for the past few months. We narrowed it down to a few options and got a lot of good feedback from partners and the elected officials, the community boards. However, we kept assessing the vision and the use of the space, and with the current COVID in-person restrictions that we all have and the unknown ahead of us and for the foreseeable future, we may not be able to open this space before construction, and we may delay it until we have a better idea of how the next few months of this COVID time is going to unfold. So to make up for that, we're looking at alternatives that are temporary spaces in the area, or either one or multiple spaces on a rotating base that we could at least have some posters and exhibits, educational materials, some smaller, it will be a smaller space, but some center, some hub that folks can pop in and pick up a pamphlet or a one-pager, the advisories that I spoke about that we printed, anything like that. So this is all still in progress. The timeline is still being determined. We'll come back again in the next couple months with more details as we move along. And the last item I have here is an art program that we would like to roll out to the community for the construction fence. So I'm sure many of you know or have noticed throughout your life living in any neighborhood, walking by construction sites, typically behind the construction fence, you'll see a green mesh fabric that covers that fence. Sometimes in the more recent years, you would notice that instead of a green boring mesh, projects print out their renderings or company logos on those fabrics. And at DDC, we have our standard company, our standard agency logo and standard project renderings that we are hoping to use for the construction fence. However, we've had a number of projects in the past that have been very successful with soliciting the artwork from the community members and to showcase and display it on these construction fences. So we're very excited about this and working on this program to tighten up the details. This is another item that's targeted to be wrapped up before construction so we can hand it off to the contractor for prints and installation. So stay tuned. I just wanted to give a quick overview on this item until we reach out in the near few weeks, month or so with more details. And the goal is to have contests throughout the project site, project footprint for kids of all ages, students, adults, local artists, local photographers, anybody that wants to join to apply and submit their artwork. We'll provide more details on what that artwork criteria is in terms of size or medium and material and how they can get it to us and with the detailed RFP sort of program that we're working on. So that's what I had on my list here. I hope I answered a lot of the questions that we received, but Trevor, Mike, I'll turn it to you if you want to open it up for questions. And after me, we have our colleagues from emergency management that will talk about the IFPM.
All right, just a question, because I know we sent some questions beforehand, and I don't know if those were answered. Procedurally, is someone from Parks here going to sort of answer those questions, or do you want us to ask them again?
We have colleagues from Parks. Alda, do you want to? Are you unmuted?
Yes, yes.
I'm happy to address some more topics now if you want me to do that. I don't have slides to speak to, but can certainly give an update based on the information we have now.
Although I don't know what kind of headset you're using, but all we're hearing is garbled noise.
Reconnect. Sometimes it's not. Give me a second.
I think we just lost her.
I heard her say she was going to reconnect. She's in the waiting room, I believe.
She is.
She's going to reconnect. So while she does that, Trevor, I failed to mention an update about the amphitheater. So maybe I can start with that.
Sure. Okay.
And then we move on to the other items. And apologies for that. So the amphitheater, that was a question that's been received. It's the site design, the actual amphitheater design, that does not include the canopy itself, because these two components are in separate design tracks because of how they unfolded throughout the design phase. The amphitheater design is included in the contract for our project with Area 1 for the project, so it's being built and included. However, the amphitheater canopy itself is on a separate design track, and we've done some design work on it. There were workshops for the actual amphitheater, and towards the end of the design, we had another workshop that included the actual amphitheater design, as well as a sort of preliminary design for the canopy. And then we were sort of in the midst of that design coordination for the canopy before COVID hit, and we still owe the community or the amphitheater working group another work session for that canopy design. At this point, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with COVID impacts. At this point, the canopy itself, we're hoping to secure funding for this canopy very soon, which will be finalized and installed on a separate project, not necessarily holding up the amphitheater design, the amphitheater itself. So once the city is able to secure the funds and we have that funding available, we'll reach back out to the amphitheater working group, and Trevor, Committee Board 3, will be sure to inform you folks as well, so we can schedule a workshop prior to finalizing that design. So I hope that answers that question.
Just one point in that, because I heard secure the funding. My understanding that this was the amphitheater itself was funded, even though it's on a separate design track.
The amphitheater itself is funded and included, but the canopy, because it was added on as a separate, as an added scope later, was not included in our funding. So we, at that point, also it's not a COVID impact, but we had to secure funding for that because it was added on later for the canopy itself.
Okay. Just so folks can understand. We're going to spend a very short time on a Q&A portion because we really want to bring DDC back to the committee so we can get some information. But we're going to take a couple questions because we still have interim flood protection after this. So I'm going to start with committee members. First, Carolyn, I see your finger, but I'm going to go with Kay first. And I'm going to ask the committee members to be very conscientious of the time. It's 7:43. We have district needs, which we'll be doing at 10 o'clock. But we're going to have an opportunity to speak with them again. So I want to encourage committee members to be brief.
Okay, hi. Thank you for the presentation. I just have one question. If you know anything about the, we're hearing the East River Compost Facility reconstruction and wetland construction is canceled. And anything you can say about that, or if someone from Parks is here?
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Now we can.
Sorry. I tried calling it as well. Okay. So yeah, sorry about the previous audio issues. So I know that there were a number of questions about the Lower East Side Ecology Center internal recreation. Yes.
Alda, there are a number of new people on this call, so if you could just introduce yourself.
Oh, yes. Alda Chan, New York City Parks. I am part of the project team. I think I recognize most of the folks here from many years of Community Board 3 and ESCR meetings. On the Lower East Side Ecology Center, I think there are actually a couple issues, but I'll answer the compost one first. So as Q mentioned, part of the early bid package work will be the relocation of the compost facility. So I think one of the things that the city has been pretty committed to all along, and that we continue to be committed to, is ensuring that the compost operations can continue during ESCR construction. And so we are making progress on the site preparation for the alternative location for the composting. And we're also making progress on preparing Seward Park House, which will be the alternative location for Lower East Side Ecology's educational programming during the ESCR construction. I think one of the questions or inquiries that we've gotten from the community board previously, as well as Lower East Side Ecology Center, has been about the ability for the compost facility to remain at its current site for as long as possible, or until we actually need to put the flood protection in there. One of the things that we do want to flag, and I'm sure DDC can speak to this in more detail, is just the sheer complexity of a project of this scale. And so having an active compost operations within a large scale construction site would be something that would be very disruptive, and I think put the schedule for delivering flood protection, which is definitely the city's priority, at risk. And so I think one of the things that we want to make sure people understand, and I think maybe next time we can bring a map or an aerial of the view, is just how much is going on in that area around the compost yard. And so many of you folks may be familiar with it, but if we're thinking from south to north, the entrance for the construction vehicles for this project, a lot of them, they'll all be coming from Montgomery Street, which is the only vehicular access. And so when we think about Montgomery Street, there is the Pier 42 site, which is just south of the existing compost yard. There is going to be an Economic Development Corporation project there to build the Pier 42 park, both the upland as well as the deck. So that is going to be another construction project that's happening concurrently with ESCR. Just north of the compost yard is the Corlers Hook Bridge, and that is going to be constructed as part of the first phase of this site as well. So that's another thing to think about just in terms of how much is going to be going on in terms with construction. There's also the ferry stop, which the city is committed to keeping open, but that's just another sort of logistical challenge in making sure that people can access that safely. We want to make sure that their construction vehicles can get in an unimpeded way, but also that people are safe, users of the park. Pretty shortly after ESCR and Pier 42, we also will be getting to a point where the Williamsburg Bridge will need maintenance, and so we're coordinating with DOT. We know that they have some maintenance work happening for the underside of the Williamsburg Bridge, and so they will also need to be accessing that portion from Montgomery Street. And so just from a sheer construction logistics perspective, we want to make sure that we can proceed with all these really important infrastructure projects. We understand that composting is something that's really important to this community. The city wants to be supportive of it, and so we are definitely prioritizing and making sure that there is a site for the Lower East Side Ecology Center.
Alda, I'm sorry. This was all great information, but honestly, you gave that to us before.
Yes.
My question is simply about the guaranteed return of the compost yard when the East River project is done. That's it.
So one of the things is, I know that I keep saying the same thing. We are still in the same place in terms of what we're committed to. I don't know. I think Christine may be on. I don't know if I don't see her, but we are hoping to start the actual discussions about a license agreement for the use of the Seward Park House, which is where they'll be going for the educational program. And as part of that, also start good faith negotiations about what an agreement will look like with the Lower East Side Ecology Center for returning to East River Park. So we haven't had that discussion yet. I think within the next week or so, our Assistant Commissioner, Sam Biederman, will be reaching out. I think we're finally at a point where, we're certainly still responding to COVID, but as we get more details about what the Seward Park House looks like, what the relocation site looks like, we can actually start talking about details. So I don't have more than that right now, but we are committed to this. We're going to be having conversations with the Lower East Side Ecology Center, and that's where we are right now.
Alda, thanks for covering that. And I just wanted to add to what Alda said about the construction operations, which was very thorough. Thanks for that. Also, the construction phasing plan that we have up on the website and that we presented several months ago, earlier this year, that again, I just wanted to remind everybody, that's a high level plan that has not been taken to the next level of details without the contractor being on board. With looking at that plan at first glance, it might look like this particular piece of the puzzle with the compost yard area could be delayed to 2022 or 2023 for the next phase. However, like Alda said, it's all about the construction operations. That whole area is going to be intensely under construction with multiple different contractors, and there's only one service road that serves that whole area. So it's more about that and the construction site safety than having access to that piece of the park. So I just wanted to clarify that.
All right, thank you. I see 3 more committee members, and then we're just going to take a couple questions from other committee members, but I really want folks to understand that we're just going to keep this section brief. We still have some important agenda items. And typically at these meetings, I tend to let everyone speak. If you've ever been to a CB3 meeting, we have stayed there so very late, but under this new reality we're facing, let's get as much information as we can. If you have questions, you can always contact the ESCR team, or you can send it through the chat, and we will try and get an answer over the next few months, because we're going to be meeting every month going forward, and this will be a recurring agenda item. So I know I see Robin and Val, and I know Carolyn raised her hand physically. So I see you, Carolyn. Let's go to Robin.
Hi, thanks, Trevor. I'll be brief. Hi, Q. Thanks again for the presentation. I have two questions. One is, you know, I feel like we haven't seen the design in a long time, and I know that that's sort of going through. I guess it's something to talk about in the future. It'd be great to see that again. As a reminder, I guess we can go to the website, but you know, the southern end, I've been talking about the southern end between Delancey and the firehouse. There's a lot of natural pathways, and that's something that I brought up. It's been brought up at a lot of meetings. I don't know if that's been addressed. And the other question is, as far as COVID, are you putting together a COVID plan for the community so that people know what the rules are for the construction workers, so people would feel a sense of safety in the community? And just one little brief thing, it would be really great, since you can open the community center, to have some kind of, you know, video set up that we can actually see the construction as it's unfolding. But I guess my big question is about the COVID, right? So are you guys putting a plan together that we can all see?
Sure. Thanks, Robin, and yeah, good to see you. So COVID, yes. So DDC, we have as a construction agency, we have our own construction site safety and QA/QC team within the agency, and of course we have a very large group of experts behind us, supporting us, being HNTB and LERA, who are very well experienced in this area. So both these units, both these groups are currently looking into the COVID impacts on construction operations and what that means. There's some chatter out there in the industry that some contractors have been able to accommodate the COVID guidelines, whether in New York State or other states in the country. Some contractors might have mentioned, I'm just speaking from my personal experience with articles and my little research, but it seems like some other contractors had to slow down their schedule because of incorporating the 6 feet or other guidelines that they have. So right now we're working on all that. This is a major aspect that is currently just behind the scenes for now, until we get the contractors on board one by one for each of those 4 scopes that I talked about, 3 scopes early on, to have that discussion with them, hear what their plan is, what their experience has been in the past several months, and we'll be able to come back with more details and show you what that criteria is and what that means, and if it's going to have any schedule impacts. So that's one of the unknowns right now. But so far, we're not anticipating any impacts to our schedule, but we'll let you know of the details of COVID operations.
Thanks.
Or operations on the COVID.
Really quickly, I'm talking also on a personal level. You know, a lot of construction workers, when they're taking their breaks, they wander into the communities, they don't wear masks and things like that. So that's just something I wanted to mention. That would be helpful to know what kind of rules of, you know, etiquette there might be. So thanks.
Well, yeah, I mean, the project site or not, any of us living in New York City and New York State, we have to comply with the mayor's restrictions, mayor's guidelines, and the governor's guidelines. So whether they're on our construction site or part of this project or not, they're just as a citizen, as someone in the area, they're required to comply with all those requirements. So we'll be sure to include all that in any sort of guideline or documents or requirements that we put in place for the contractor, but it will be universal for all of them.
Thank you. Let's go to Val.
Okay.
And committee members, before Val, you start, because running the screen is a challenge. Michael, bless you, because I'm trying to figure out, I'm getting a text message that there's a committee member had their hand raised, and I don't know who that is. It's some weird background. So Val, go ahead. Sorry, Val.
Val, before we start, I'll just remind the committee members, because again, we can't see everybody's video.
Right.
You know, it's a limited number of screens that we see. And so if you go to the participants tab, at the bottom of your toolbar, that's where the raise hand function is for the committee members. If you're on a phone, you hit *9. All right, Val, go ahead.
Okay, all right. I have two questions. I'm not sure, did we cover the interim flood protection, or is that going to be later?
That's the next one now.
That's the next. Oh, okay. So, so then I just have one question here. You said that the money is not quite clear about the amphitheater, the overlay, the whatever. Yeah, the overlay.
Canopy.
The canopy. The issue there for people was the issue of noise. So I guess I just want to understand, what does this mean? Because that was a big issue for people that lived near the amphitheater. I can hear the amphitheater in my house like it's in my house. So I guess that's the question is, what does this mean that you don't have the funding? Because I don't think that's what people thought about this whole issue. So what does that mean in terms of noise and then the funding? Just speak to that, because I think people do want to know.
No, I absolutely understood. Again, it's an existing condition. We committed to providing a canopy over this amphitheater towards the end of last year, and because it was an add-on to the actual design, to the actual amphitheater, it went on a separate design track because we couldn't hold up the rest of the project design and not finalize everything else because of the canopy component. So the canopy went on a separate design track, which means it needs its own separate funding, and it's only, if you think about it as like a multi-layer point of view, this is just one layer that got added on to the project among many other layers too that we tried to accommodate and coordinate, and a lot of them are moving forward. So the canopy right now, again, it hasn't been cut from the project. The canopy, we started the preliminary design. We presented that earlier this year, or I think it was December when we had that amphitheater working group. Maybe November, I can't remember. It was back then, but think of it as going on temporary pause until we can secure the funds required for this canopy. And the funds is for finalizing the design and also going to construction for it.
I think, Q, that's the concern, because we've all heard that the city council is very, or the city is very much, because of COVID, very much looking at possibly having to cut their budget. So what is the likelihood, it almost sounds like, what is the likelihood of getting the funding for the canopy in this COVID environment when the city is talking about cutting funding for all kinds of city agencies? I can tell you, I'm a nurse, and quite a few people I know have just been laid off.
Right, I totally understand, and that's a little out of my purview. But again, COVID is such a big unknown and disruptive event right now that this is where we are. So we just have to wait to see how the next few months are going to unfold and how council and the mayor are able to navigate through these times. And this is one of those items that it just happened to be on this track that we just have to wait for it. So unfortunately, I don't have a better answer for that, and I'm sorry, but we have to wait to see how we can secure funding for this.
All right, let's do this. This obviously needs some advocacy and probably a discussion at a future CB3 meeting, since we still have some time on that. That's one of the notes that we have to make sure we follow up on. But I'm gonna go to Carolyn next. Carolyn, if you could unmute.
Can I just ask one thing? Where are you looking for the funding? Because that's how we would advocate, city, state, or federal.
I have to get back to you on that.
All right, well, I got your card. I'll definitely contact
you. Okay. Can I speak now? Hello?
Yes, Carolyn, you're on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Okay,
When we were at the webinar a couple of days ago on the art fence, I had asked questions about the phasing and 2 maps had been shown. Those maps were not included with the PDF that was sent out after that. Would you please provide the maps that show the phasing as to how you plan the construction for the ESCR? I would really appreciate it. I went to the DDC website. I could not access those maps. They need to be made available to the community.
Let me take a look at that. That might have been an oversight. I apologize. Again, we're not actively holding back information from anybody. If we present it to you on a call, we will be able to send it to you and you can have it. So it might have been an oversight, or it might have been just a map. I have to go look back and see what it is. But it might have been a map that was just an example to show something. So let me circle back with you on that one.
Could I please say something? Okay, the maps that you showed showed phase 1 and phase 2 and the areas that would be open during each phase. And also there was talk of the 3rd phase, which is the parallel conveyance system, which was referred to as phase 3. That information needs to be available to the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. It needs to be. I agree with you. But again, those maps. So now I'm remembering. I think those maps we just pulled up during the call for conversation to use as a reference. Those maps are not ready to be shared publicly because, again, these are phased construction maps that are correlated to the timeline. And until the timeline is not verified and discussed with the contractor, we can't commit to that just yet. So give us a little time. Let us tighten that up, and in the next month or two, or whenever we can finalize that, we'll definitely share those maps with you and more details on each of those construction phases.
Okay, but the thing about it is you're proposing to start the construction in September. That's approximately a month and a half from now, and you're saying that
No, not construction for the whole project site. Our construction is a step-by-step. Every piece has a little timeline attached to it. So September is only the Lower East Side Ecology Center relocation and some trees being transplanted. After that, we go into mid-fall for PA2 and CB6 area construction. After that, we come to your district for CB3 district for project area 1 area. That's towards the end of fall. So as we get closer to those timeframes, every time we have to have the contractor on board before we even hit construction and before we can even provide a week or a date of shoveling the ground. So right now it's July. I'm optimistically hopeful that within the next couple months, we'll be able to slowly provide that information as each one of these contractors come on board one after another.
All right, let's do this because I understand what Carolyn is saying is that we need those phasing maps. So Q, when do you think you'll have those ready?
Again, as soon as contractors come on board, those discussions, meetings are held and finalized, then we'll share it with you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll follow up with that. But just to everyone on the committee, we are taking notes. Ryan is feverishly taking all these comments and questions, but we will have follow-up on that. I think that was it for committee members. So there's a clock up, but I'm really going to ask for folks because I know there are a lot of people here who want to see the interim flood protection presentation. So, and Michael, I can't see everyone, and I apologize if I can't see everyone. Who's on my screen right now is Frank. Let me see if I can scroll over and see if there are other folks.
The first name on the list is Pat Arnow.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I don't have that. So for, okay.
Yes, hello, everyone. I would like to ask about what Mr. Lynch was talking about closing lanes during the nighttime, and that he said that they are going to be closing lanes and doing nighttime work. And I do not understand why you are not doing work during the day and closing lanes during the day. I think we need to consider community over cars and to be thinking about changing that program. And I'd like CB3 to be thinking about that and advocating for that. And also he talked about dust monitoring, and I'd really like to know how they're going to monitor and what they're, are they going to say on a windy day they can't put in fill? which would delay the project indefinitely because it's always a windy day along the river. So things like that, I would really like more clarification on those kinds of things. Thank you.
So
Thank you,
I'll
Pat, for
jump
being
in,
brief.
John.
Before you answer, just one thing, because the 2 minute also applies to the answer. So if we could just stick to what she asked, we're going to go a little bit over that time because I know you have to go into detail, but we're going to limit the question and answer to 2 minutes. So those who are asking questions, be conscious of that. Thank you.
Sure, really quick. So nighttime work, definitely community over cars, our priority. We agree with you, just as any of you guys living in this area. We live in different areas and their neighborhoods as well, and this is what we would want for our neighborhoods. So there is a little amount of work that needs to happen during the nighttime. I'll let John explain that a little bit on a high level, but again, as we get closer to that time with contractors coming on board and verifying the work, the scope that we have set forward, the schedule that we have set forward, we will at that point be able to come back and give you more details why this nighttime work needs to happen. Can it be, is there any other alternative creative way to reduce it more than what we already have, or any question like that? John, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so just real quick, this is John Lynch again to address the two questions. First, when I was referring to closing lanes, that's on the FDR Drive, where it's further north from this community boards area. It's up by 15th Street North by Con Ed. That's to install the flood wall because it's right adjacent to their parking lot. Regarding dust, you know, we're going to oversee material storage and stockpiling, make sure it's covered. We'll have wash down stations to make sure trucks aren't bringing dust onto the streets, and manage it that way. So it's part of the site safety plan and the contractor's operations.
All right, thank you. And I know we're not going to be able to go into detail for every answer, and you can always submit to the folks who have presented. Michael, who's next?
There's a number of people already putting their questions in the chat box, so we will forward questions that we can't get to the DDC. So please feel free to keep putting questions in the chat box. Amy, I'm assuming Burkhoff, Amy B.
Yes, so I'm Amy Burkhoff, and my question is about the early closure of the compost yard. And originally the rationale that we had was that this was going to be transformed into a temporary lawn for passive recreation. Now it sounds like the rationale is to make life easier for the construction people. And my question is why you would expect that it would be a worse obstruction to construction to have a small professional operation going on than to have a temporary lawn full of people that have no particular training. Seems like that would be more obstructive than to have a small professional operation. Thank you.
This is Alda. I can start EDC maybe if
go ahead, Alda. Yeah.
I missed, why don't you jump in? I think one of the things I would flag is that the early package with the lawn relocation as well as the tree transplant was originally slated for this spring. And so the idea was that there would be an entire season, one to have the open space lawn established, but then also just to have that space open for spring, summer, and fall. And so there was an idea that there was like a useful time for that. The other thing to think about is how users would access that site. And so if you think about the access that a pedestrian or a cyclist would use in order to get to, if there had been a lawn there, or if that was the original plan, it would be similar to the phasing plan. People will most likely be coming, we've been looking at access from the Delancey Street Bridge, for example. So there are alternative ways, but for a truck, for example, the only way to get in is Montgomery Street. And so that's the real challenge here, particularly now that we have deferred the early bid package to the fall. That window of time is just one in which all the construction is anticipated to ramp up later this year.
If you want to jump in for about 15 seconds.
Pretty much what Aldo said, and the passive lawn space is still on our list. We have to confirm that with the contractor to make sure it lines up. Now that we deferred it to fall, we have to figure out the sodding and the planting season. So Amy, back to your question, I get what you're saying, but it's a lot easier for a contractor to manage small groups of pedestrians walking over the bridge to access this lawn space versus highly active construction sites like Alda explained, with multiple different groups of contractors that are not necessarily part of the same group. We have different agencies that each project has its own contractor. So to have another operation mixed in with that, it's one added layer of complication and risk that we have to consider. So it's more about providing that space temporarily until that piece of the puzzle, that piece of the park has to be closed down. And we're still looking into that passive lawn space.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to take one more question. I know there are 2 hands raised, and I hate to do this, but I really think we're 12 minutes over this one topic. So if you could, Michael, I'm going to give you the task of choosing one person. No?
Frank, go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, CB3 Parks, and thank you everyone from DDC, et cetera. It's just a very quick, maybe it's more of a thing to point out because I just want you guys to I want to make sure you guys are thinking of this. On July 7th, about 9:15 p.m., right in the entrance going from Pier 42 into the park, there was a weird phenomenon, which I'm just pointing out for safety access reasons. You had an incident in the park. I don't know what it was, but there was an ambulance trying to get out, but at the same time you had fire engines and police cars getting in, and it was a weird little dance because they were confronting each other and they had to back up. So I just want to make sure that you guys have a plan that you can bring back to the community board for safety access, because that was a really seemingly minor thing, but it stood out to me because from my understanding, that really is the only way to go in and out of the park during construction. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. That's actually a very good flag. We do have an emergency access plan, and this has been tightly coordinated with DOT and other city agencies. And that, like you said, that service road is very narrow. It's essentially just a one-way, or maybe a very narrow, tight two-way street if you can squeeze trucks and cars in. And there's a bottlenecking effect there, like you mentioned. So we do have a plan that has been all hashed out and finalized during the design phase last year and the year before that. And I'm happy to follow up and provide details. I'll try to pull this out as its own separate item, and we'll upload it on the website too for the community's reference.
All right, thank you, Q. I see Jennifer and Diane. If you want to type in your questions to the community board, I'm going to go with the next presentation. I'll see if I can work them in some way. But up now is the interim flood protection.
Excuse me, this is Jennifer Wojcik. I'm sorry, but some person set the expectation. If we waited patiently, we would be able to ask a question. While I appreciate there was a lot of information to go through, I do not feel it's fair for those of us who have attended this patiently to be cut off. I do ask, please, that you would take more questions if hands are raised, because you set the expectation in the beginning we would have it, and I don't think it's fair for us to have sat through all of this and not have the opportunity to ask a question.
Jennifer, I'm asking you to type in your question.
I have actually, you said it was a question or comments, and mine are comments with an end, very small question.
Jennifer, please, I'm going to have to mute you. If you can type in your comment, what I want to do is I'm going to work in you and Diane somewhere in this presentation, but I want to get the next presentation or the next presentation up. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to come back to you. It's just that we really have a lot of other items. But I will try and work you back in depending on how long the flood protection is. I know you've sat through this, but there's still other things we have to talk with, and this is all ESCR stuff. So that being said, let's begin the presentation. I'm not going to forget about you, Jennifer and Diane. Mike, I believe you have to unmute S. Rosen, correct?
Nope, she's all set to go. She has co-host ability. She should be able to.
Hi, it's Susan Rosen. I think Heather was going to kick us off. I'm just trying to share my screen.
Sure.
Heather, are you? Okay, maybe she was not able to be on right at the moment. Are you seeing the presentation, the first slide?
Oh, no.
Interesting.
Susan, you might want to.
Private stuff.
Oh, hello? Are you able?
You might
now I
want to
can hear you.
minimize
Are you able
that
to hear
screen
me?
right now.
Okay, we have Heather now, but
Oh, great.
Susan, we're seeing your email or chat or something with Heather.
Okay, that's not interesting. Okay.
Okay.
That was earlier today. Okay. Why is that happening?
I think Heather just joined too.
Yeah, I'm on. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello? Okay,
Yeah.
great.
All right, let me try something.
Well, if Susan's pulling this up, I can get started because I know we're all here for the interest of time. So my name's Heather Reuter. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Risk Reduction and Recovery at New York City Emergency Management, and joined by Susan, who's our Program Manager. So I know some of you have seen us present before. So as she's pulling this up, we will be presenting on our feasibility analysis for the Interim Flood Protection Measures Program. As we've been working and speaking with the community over the last year, we had heard the request to identify if there was a feasible option for the IFPM measures along the ESCR corridor. So with our engineering team, we and the Mayor's Office of Resiliency and City Hall, we've gone through a planning process that started last year, and we were wrapping up right around the time of COVID. So we've completed our feasibility, and we are here to present our findings today. And then I think when Susan gets this up, then we will walk through the deck.
Okay.
Susan, I have a backup PDF version. Do you want me to put that up?
Sure. I'm really sorry. I tried this today with another Zoom and it seemed to work, but I'm not that good. So I'll just ask you to skip through the slides. My name is Susan Rosen. I work at the New York City Emergency Management, managing the Interim Flood Protection Measures Program. As you know, we were asked to look at the Side Coastal Resiliency project area and determine if it would be feasible to design and implement an IFPM project while those long-term measures are being constructed. So first, I'm going to provide you with a very brief overview of the IFPM program. We'll look quickly at the ESCR floodplain compared to a potential IFPM floodplain, and then move into the results of the analysis. So the next slide, please. The IFPM program was established in 2016. The goal, as you see, was to reduce low-level, high reoccurrence coastal flood risks while New York City continues to advance its longer-term coastal protection needs. Our focus has always been on protecting critical facilities and some low-lying neighborhoods. The timeline typically takes approximately 24 months from initial analysis to construction completion. IFPM provides flood risk reduction for the overland surge from lower intensity, higher frequency tropical storms or hurricanes. It does not mitigate against rainfall flooding, protect against severe events like Sandy, or fully eliminate flood risks. We're also not able to activate for other types of storms such as nor'easters, as it says, due to limitations in forecasting. I really want to stress, IFPM is not a life safety program. The intent is to protect infrastructure so that residents can get back into their homes faster and city agencies can continue to operate. All residents are expected to follow evacuation orders issued by New York City, even in areas protected by IFPM. We are not about life safety. Evacuation orders still apply at all IFPM sites. Next slide. So as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, this is a slide showing the ESCR project area with the blue shading. I'm sorry, the next slide, I think yeah, there you go. So yeah, right there. As you know, the blue shading shows the extent of the flooding that the ESCR project will prevent when it's completed. So the next slide, please. Then this is an image of the flooding that a potential interim flood protection measures project might reduce if it were to be deployed in this area. Next slide. So whenever we look at a site, we have to look at, we looked at different solutions along this entire alignment, right? We looked at the whole project area, we looked at a smaller sort of multi-block level, and at the site level. Whenever we look at any of our projects, we have to take many, many factors into consideration. So, and any one of them can be a block to the feasibility. So first we have to look at the drainage. Where can the water enter a site from outside an IFPM alignment? Can anything be done to stop it? And is it feasible within our program? Then we have to look at the timeline. For facilities such as a wastewater treatment plant or a firehouse or something like that, they take an average of 18 months. And neighborhood sites, as I said before, often take at least 24 or more months. And then we have to look at how many coastal storm seasons will we be offering protection before the permanent mitigation is in place. We look at the risk reduction benefit. So what level of protection can we provide? What infrastructure is actually at risk in the area that we can protect? And will we be protecting for multiple hurricane seasons again? The complexity has to be looked at. Neighborhood sites bring many complications, including traffic or pedestrian impacts, aesthetic concerns, and other kinds of complex issues like that. And in an area like the ESCR where there's active construction, that's also complex, but we sort of loop that into the operational impacts. Will the measures impede traffic or operations during an activation? And possibly more critically, will we be able to deconflict between the IFPM measures and the ongoing construction for the permanent mitigation? If we were in a site like the ESCR, as we've been in some other sites, we have to be constantly thinking about the re-engineering and accommodating changes due to construction. This would then possibly leave it open to vulnerability during a coastal storm. Then we have to look at the estimated cost of what an alignment would cost. Is the cost justified by the amount of the risk reduction provided and the number of seasons we can protect for? Next slide, please. In all of these considerations, drainage is the primary consideration for feasibility. Our engineering analysis found that the drainage issues across the 3 levels were insurmountable given the parameters and the interim nature of our program. And I'll come back to that in more detail in a moment. We looked at the timeline, and looking at this with the estimated 24 months from concept to installation, your ESCR project would be well on its way when we looked at the entire project area or the multi-block level. And on the site level, other planned permanent mitigation projects are estimated to be completed within months of the same time frame that IFPM would be completed. Looking at the risk reduction benefit, with the measures available to IFPM, we can only provide risk reduction to the 15-year return level across the site or in a multi-block, and much of the infrastructure within this flood extent is already elevated above the flood height, or as mentioned at the site level will be completed about the same time as IFPM, if not before. On the complexity, across all 3 levels, an IFPM project would be a significant daily presence in the area, and these are all very complex and large alignments. In the operational side of things, we cannot place IFPM directly in the ESCR construction area as there would be too many construction conflicts. And IFPM would be subject to constant design, constant redesign. Again, this could be happening during the coastal storm season, and we would possibly not be able to protect during that season. And then during a coastal storm activation, the multi-block and the site level would likely see very large traffic and pedestrian impacts. You see some estimated costs at the bottom. We compared those potential alignments to current sites in our portfolio to estimate those costs. And just to give you a brief idea. And I know that, when you compare that to, the cost of a project like the ESCR, it's seems like a very minimal cost, but you have to compare the benefit that you'd be getting for that. The next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about the drainage because as I mentioned, that is really the biggest roadblock. It's the first thing that we look at in any site. So this image shows you again the 15-year return level in blue that a very conceptual line of IFPM protection would be addressing. And if you can see the sort of green lines, this is again a very preliminary idea of where the engineers thought you might be able to put some IFPM measures. But if you look at the purple lines on the diagram, that's the sewer infrastructure that leads underneath that line. It would bring water in through this sewer infrastructure and into the dry side. The next slide shows this in a little bit more detail. So this image illustrates, and I can't use my cursor, but you can see on the water side, you've got the pipe for the sewer system, and about half in the middle of the page, you have this backflow prevention. So there's backflow prevention on this drain, but what would happen is the water would come up over land as it floods, go past the location of that backflow prevention, enter into the storm drains, flow up through the rest of the sewer system and up on the other side of what is a potential HESCO or IFPM measure in the green there. You see the water coming up there. The next slide. This shows a very similar image where there is no backflow prevention. The same thing would happen with water coming up both through the sewer system and over land, going back into the catch basins, and again, coming up on what we call the dry side of our alignment. And there are numerous places along the ESCR coastline where you have these open lines that would lead to this kind of issue. Next slide. We looked at the site level. So this is an example of the NYCHA Baruch houses. Again, you see a line of a green, very potential alignment. And you see inside the little red dots, and that represents catch basins in that inside the alignment. There are 21 catch basins that would need to be covered at least to prevent water coming up. And that's a huge number. The next slide. This is walled. This is showing another potential alignment. And this site has 15 catch basins that would need to be covered or addressed in some way. So it's a huge number in our deployment. I just want to mention that in most cases, IFPM would have stopped evaluating a site once the drainage analysis was determined to be unmanageable. But in this case, we took the next steps of looking at all those other considerations to be especially thorough and responsive to the concerns of this community. But in summary, an interim flood protection measures project for this area is not feasible. The most practical actions are for the community and the city to work toward implementing the permanent work as quickly as possible. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, there's a lot more pages. Is that for something else?
So those are annex slides. I mean, this is really the heart of it. And I'm happy, I would refer to those if we have questions that, bring those up, but those are also there for people to look at. If you, I don't want to take up too much time.
Not a problem. So we're gonna do the same thing. I believe Trevor took a little break.
No, I'm here. I thought you were going to take a break.
I did. Sorry, I didn't tell you I was back.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Michael, can you tell me what committee members have their hands raised?
Valentina Jones and Troy Velez.
Do you know who was first?
Val.
Okay, Val?
Okay, in terms of like the Baruch houses, they have a bunch of fences all over the place, and they have the semi-temporary interventions. And I think, like I said, for the person for Lower East Side Power Partnership said that when you have those HESCO barriers outside, like at Smith and Lands End 2, and now Baruch has all of this going on, that the people are very aware that they're low-lying, it's somewhat dangerous, etc. What kind of talks have you had with the people that are doing the interventions in Baruch houses now? I guess my other question, well, let me just say, otherwise, that presentation seemed extremely complicated to me. And I would hope that you develop something that's a little less complicated for the people that, like I said, Baruch is looking at all of these weird looking fences. You almost feel like you're in prison down there. So I would, you develop something a little simpler to explain to those people, especially the seniors.
Valentina, so hi, we are not working at Baruch. Emergency management has no project there. That is the NYCHA Permanent Mitigation Project that is slated to be finished in the last quarter of 2021. So that project is well on its way, and that's their permanent mitigation.
It says, I'm looking at an article that says that is semi-temporary intervention.
I don't know what that article is. It's not our project. I think what they mean is that it's probably partially, it's a a system of deployables, but that is their program and their plan for permanent mitigation at that development.
Okay. All right.
Troy,
Thanks. Troy.
Yes, thank you. My question is similar to Valentina's. I'm from Baruch, and we have flood walls going up. My question was about the drainage. Did your report take into consideration that Baruch has walls going up for drainage? Because I seen that you said in Baruch they have 21 spots that could be flooded. So you guys are not working in conjunction with them?
No. So the work that's going on there is a NYCHA project, and whatever they have done and their assessment and their engineers have had to do whatever's necessary for that flood protection. My point of addressing that for you is telling you that during an interim project like we would be putting out, we would not be doing any, capital construction or any addressing of things like the drainage in a way that is going to be a permanent solution for that NYCHA might be doing. But I have no knowledge of what NYCHA is doing.
Let me just add some context to this. One of the things that we resolved is that the city would take on or look at a feasibility analysis of interim flood protection to the area. So this is the results of this study. So there's no work being done. We just asked for this study to be done so we could take a look at whether the area could get interim flood protection. So this is separate from a lot of the work that's going on in NYCHA above, well, for the whole city. If you want to look at an example of what this protection provides or what has been done, I would urge you to look at Smith Houses, as Val has said, also at 82 Rutgers and Lands End 2. They have the HESCO barriers, and in some cases they put up the Jersey, drawing a blank.
Well, so Tiger Dam. So the plan would be that
Right.
if we have a coastal storm and we are told to activate, we will come out and fill in the gaps that are left for access at those sites with Tiger Dams generally. Yeah.
So that's what this analysis is about. It's separate from what NYCHA is doing on its own for permanent emergency flood protection.
Trevor,
I need to go to someone else, Val, because we really, are there any other committee members?
There's no other committee members, but Susan, your colleague Heather has her hand up, so I'm not sure.
Heather, do you have a question?
Hello? Hello? Okay, sorry. No, I was just trying to unmute myself so I could help with the responses with Susan. But yeah, I recognize it might be a little confusing. Really the effort of us showing the NYCHA developments is that we were trying to think at different scales. So, in looking at, is there anywhere in the ESCR area that we could provide our temporary protection? So knowing the drainage was impassable. The drainage was not going to let us be able to find a solution for the whole neighborhood. So we said, can we do smaller sites? And that's why we looked at NYCHA as well. But unfortunately, in the two NYCHA developments that Susan spoke about, there's the drainage and in the sewer network. And so all the different sewers, it just creates other ways for water to get in that our program can't protect against.
Trevor, could we invite NYCHA next month?
We're going to talk about that. So I'm going to note, I know that Brian is cramping her hand, but she'll add that to the request. We'll see if we can get him in, or at least to the subcommittee to talk about it.
Troy, follow-up question?
Troy, you have something quick?
Yeah. Has this information been passed on to NYCHA so that they know that they're at risk for flood?
Yep, we've spoken to NYCHA. They were part of our analysis. So when we looked at options for ISPM with the engineers, we included NYCHA from the get-go. So they're doing their permanent work. Our program, our hope was to see if there was an option for us to do something in the short term. But fortunately they're moving fast, and they're looking at things that are going to provide long-term flood reduction with their projects. And they have all the findings that we had as part of our study as well.
So I see.
Thank you.
Michael, you see Carolyn, and that should be it, right?
Alan's the last board member, and then we have 4 members of the public.
Okay, so we're going to go with those 4 right now, and after Carolyn.
Carolyn, go ahead.
Okay, a quick question about the image that you showed for the Stuyvesant Cove area and the interim flood protection, because the bulk of our water that came during Sandy came straight down Avenue C, straight from the East River. And it was like between 8 to 4 feet, depending on where you were in the neighborhood. So that was one of the reasons that we had been asking for interim flood protection, particularly in that area, to block the overflow from the surge of the river.
Mm-hmm.
So could you please explain why?
Yeah, I think if you want to go back to the presentation, if you could go to slides 23, and I could start speaking about it there, I think. Okay, so these highlights are showing the low points of the alignment. And I think you're talking about the area all the way to the right. That's the circle number 3. Is that correct?
Here.
Okay, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, so this is an image. This is not necessarily that point, but this is showing you an image of, you know, the ESCR alignment, and to illustrate the low point. So the road there, or the pathway there, is sort of the low point between these 2 small hills with the trees. When we place HESCO barriers or tiger dams, we add 4 feet of protection. That's the parameters of our program. Can you go to the next slide? So you can see where this is an image of the 4 feet of the HESCOs in that space. And this is an approximate 15-year storm that would stop the water. Anything above that is going to flow over the top of the HESCOs. Sandy was certainly more feet than this, than 4 feet of protection at this point. So anything above that is going to flow right in. And as you sort of see in their illustration, and I'm not saying that this is an accurate depiction, but most of the buildings and the infrastructure at the level are already higher than this point. So in that sense, IFPM is not going to provide that sort of protection. Does that answer the question?
I guess it depends.
Let me just add to that, because I think there's a little bit of backstory. The HESCOs and the temporary interim flood protection only provide for how many feet and for what type of storm?
So above ground, 4 feet of additional height to whatever the level of the ground is there. So you have to start at the low point in your alignment. That's the absolute height that we can achieve in flood protection.
And if the area were to experience a Sandy type of event, would you even deploy surge?
So our plan for our coastal storm activation is to deploy at all of our sites, because when the forecasters give us their forecast 4 days out, when we make a decision whether we're going to deploy or not, we aren't sure what that storm is going to look like. They may tell us, today we think it's going to be an X kind of storm with this kind of direction and this kind of wind speed, but in the 3 days between the time we have to make that decision and the time we need to be fully deployed, that can change. So it could change, and it could be the storm that we're protecting for, or it could be lower, or it could take a right and go back out to sea, or it could be a Sandy level storm. We don't know. So our plan is to deploy everywhere.
I guess what I'm really asking, because I think what Carolyn is trying to ask in a certain way, is that what we need to understand is that this type of interim flood protection plan really only goes up to about 4 feet. Any storms over that, even if you're going to deploy them, the water's going to overtop the barrier. And if you have a low-lying area or a high area that's above a certain height, you can't necessarily install this system may or may not work. And I think I'm just trying to get you to make that clear for people.
Yeah.
Right. I
And in
realize.
addition, our engineers looked at the infrastructure in the area, and determined that for the most part, it's all, above the level that we can give protection to. So we wouldn't be adding any benefit to be there.
Yeah, I mean, so, and this is Heather, just kind of expand on that. So we always have to look at the low point because water is going to come in from the lowest point. So that, we spoke about that Avenue C, Stuyvesant and Co area is a lower point. So in looking there, we said, okay, even if we could put something on the ground with our measures, I just want to go back to the key finding, water will still come through the sewers underneath and make the what are supposed to be the dry side wet. So the water will still find ways to come around our barriers. It will come underground or it will come from other lower points in the area and come around our barriers.
Thank you. I didn't, yeah. So even at this storm that you see in this picture, with the drainage as it is, water's going to come through.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go, Michael, we still have 4 hands because that's the hands we're going to use, but
Jennifer Wojan, Diane, Tommy Loeb, Wendy Brower.
Well, guess who goes first? Jennifer and Diane. Well, Michael, you can unmute Jennifer or Diane.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, hello. I'm a Midtown East resident, and I just learned of this project last night. I'm going to speak very speedily so I can exercise my first 2 minutes. Most of my comments are comments. I will say first and foremost, in terms of the city presentation tonight, I own my own firm, a communications firm. I teach communications internally at top corporations to top executives. I am awestruck at the amount of vagueness, ambiguity. The theme of at a later date, we'll fill you in on that. We'll get there. You're about to start a $1.45 billion project and you're still in the thick of figuring it out. It actually seems more like a strategy than an actual answer. It seems calculated. The fact that this is not being publicized to the public now is wrong and immoral because I believe it's a strategy to keep them in the dark. Also, just in terms of the city and what's going on, people might need to be sleeping in this park because they won't have homes. Your mayor, who you work for the city, is begging the federal government every day to give us more money because people's homes are going to be lost and people won't be able to eat. And to invest in a project at this time, to spend $1 billion of taxpayer dollars, and I do want that question answered, is this taxpayer dollars, is absolutely egregious and inhumane. And for all of you who work on this, I know you're collecting a paycheck, but there is a moral compass that I hope all of you will think about because it's simply wrong. Our city has tremendous resource constraint because of COVID-19. You are also creating a public health risk. This idea of containing dust is, I'm sorry, but complete and utter hogwash. You will not be able to contain dust. You will infect these communities. This is also a socioeconomically challenged community. That is all simply wrong. I want to announce today that many of us who've just learned about this will do everything in our power to enlist corporations, high-level celebrities, we've already begun to work on it, as well as the community, to educate them where you are all deliberately holding out on information. And my question is, has this ever been officially approved by the state legislature? Because all the materials I've read say it has not. That is my most pertinent question.
I don't know if Parks wants to answer that because that was a full 2 minutes, but if someone wants to briefly comment on that. Or the DDC team.
Manelli, are you still on the call?
No.
Manelli, is Manelli still on the call? Would you like to comment or we can follow up?
I don't think we can follow up. I'd like an answer and I'd like comments just in general.
Jennifer, I'm going to mute you. I'm going to give them an opportunity to respond if they don't. If they do, I'm also going to give a brief comment.
Hi, this is Manelli Duque with the Mayor's Office. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So to the first question, yes, this project is funded with taxpayer dollars. This project is funded with federal funds from the Sandy, from the Rebuild by Design competition, as well as capital funds from the city. which are funded through bonds. On your second question, this project has not required state approval, but we have gone through all of the city level approvals, and we're just completed this past year.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to the next speaker, I'm just going to, Jennifer, I'm not sure, and maybe you are, that the committee members were all volunteers here, and we've been working on this project for years. I know that some people are just finding out about this, but it just, and I could probably speak for a lot of committee members who have sat through many evenings of meetings of community engagement for quite some time. So maybe we need to do more as a community board, but this project has gone through, and Q, you can correct me on how many years we've been doing this.
I just want you all to know, at one point, people will walk out their door with their children to go to the park, and there will be bulldozers, and they won't understand what's happening. And all of you have a civic responsibility to acknowledge that and to know how many lives and heartbroken.
Sorry, Jennifer, I've given you your time to speak. I was just trying to make a note that we might need to do more, because I think as committee members, we really think that everyone knows about this project because just of the time we invest every single night on Thursday of the
I can
month.
assure you they don't, but we're going to make the community aware because we don't trust you.
All right, so
I can assure you also that the community is not aware, and also I think you need to work on not only addressing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Michael, who's the next speaker? I hate to do this, but this is the Zoom. Diane.
Hi, this is Diane Lake.
Diane, be aware that your question will include the response of 2 minutes.
Yes. I live very near Carolyn, so I echo her questions and concerns, particularly about interim flood protection in the Stuyvesant Cove Park area. I listened to the explanation that you just gave her, so I will, try to process that information. And so my question is, the document that you showed tonight, will that be made available publicly on the website, like DDC does their presentations every time they make them available to us? Will this interim flood protection study be available to the public so that we have time to look it over, absorb it, and ask follow-up questions?
I think it's already on the CB3 website.
It's on our website, Diane. If you go on,
go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
If you go to the CB3 website and click on the meeting schedule and scroll down to the parks meeting, the 2 links are right there for you. You can get them right now.
Oh, the second link is there now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, Michael, we have 2 more speakers.
Yes, Tommy Loeb, please.
Hello.
Tommy, I know, Tommy, we have that 2-minute timer for both the question and the answer.
Thank you, Trevor. First of all, I want to correct the mayor's office. There is currently litigation. We're in court. The community is in court. Over 90 people are signed on as plaintiffs on the alienation case. There is a strong opinion by everybody, including our state legislators, that the city violated the state law regarding alienation. That case will be heard sometime in the near future, and we don't know the outcome. But it is not true that there is no litigation. Secondly, I'd like to know, were any outside engineering firms consulted or used in your study, or was this all in-house? Let me ask my questions. And then finally, because when we had an outside independent consultant review ESCR, he came up with several serious problems with the current plan, including the floodgates, the amount of fill, the failure to consider a 100-year storm. So was this all done in-house? And my final part of it is, you're telling us now that you know nothing about a $350 million NYCHA project that is involving resilience, and that now I even hear that project will be totally useless because the water is now going to back up until you complete your project into those walls. That's what you're saying. You're saying you can't do the interim flood protection because the water will back up into those sewers.
Okay.
Those sewers are in the middle of those projects.
Let's back up a little bit. I'll answer the questions about the NYCHA. No, I don't know anything about that project because it's not in my scope of work to work with their permanent mitigation. Their permanent mitigation and their engineers, I'm assuming, took all of those drainage issues into consideration. Within our program, there's nothing that we have in our parameters of our program that could address the drainage issues. That doesn't mean it can't be addressed. Those drainage issues, the drainage issues on the whole entire alignment, are possible to be addressed, but not within our program. Those are major capital construction projects. Those are not part of an interim flood protection solution. So that's those questions. I'm sorry you asked a few questions in there.
I think, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that covers it. I don't want to speak for, I don't think we can speak for NYCHA, but again, our analysis was what our measures, the feasibility of what the tools in our toolbox for our program. And for our program, because everything is on the surface and it's these limited number of measures, it wasn't feasible. And it was feasible because water would come in also through the sewer because of the way our program works and our tools work. But we can't speak on behalf of NYCHA. They're not here. So I think, as earlier in the conversation, I think that those questions certainly should be directed to them and have an opportunity for them to respond to their program.
Were any outside engineer, any outside engineering?
Yeah. Oh, right. Yes. 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 We have On-Call Maritime engineering firm, BTMI with Moffitt and Nickel was our engineering for this analysis. And then we worked also very closely with the ESCR engineers as well. So it was a sharing of information.
Will we have
Let's do this, Tommy. We're over.
No, I just want to know, will we have access to that engineer's report?
There's no formal report.
So there is.
Thank you, Tommy. We're going to continue. I'm sorry, but Michael, there are two more or one more?
Wendy was our final question, but Robin just, so we'll go to Wendy first.
Okay.
So regarding IFPM, you talked about all the engineering and the mechanical planning, but where is the social planning? I've heard about this since last fall and talked to residents, and everybody thinks this work is being done right now around the NYCHA campuses so they can shelter in place. They do not know they're going to have to evacuate. We have a very limited number of evacuation centers, and with the need to socially distance, in a sense, we have even less space for people. So why aren't we working together now with people, with local residents, not just in NYCHA, but all affected buildings, to make sure they have an evacuation plan? This could happen very quickly, and as you just said, things change. I'm really afraid that you are leaving people out, and yet there's research that shows that communities where people know how to work together, where they trust each other, where they trust government, fare better in disruptions, save lives in disruption. So I'm very concerned that not only have you left them out of the report, the entire ESCR is a top secret to people in the park who use it every day for their health and well-being. When are you going to walk into the park and talk to people who don't come to meetings, don't use social media, may not read your little posters? And it's really quite scary for me as a local resident to know that there's nearly 10,000 people who live right at the river's edge who have no plan. What are you going to do about that?
I'm not sure if you're addressing that to emergency management and IFPM. So just to clarify, when I said that IFPM projects, you still have to evacuate. That is for an IFPM project. That is, I don't know. Well, okay.
Yeah, so we have to
evacuate when
at all of our sites, we have done, numerous outreaches to the community. I went to Smith Houses several times. So everywhere that we have an IFPM project, we have communicated as much as we can. And New York City Emergency Management is constantly working to educate the community across New York City about evacuations and how to prepare.
To offer presentations, we're happy to offer presentations around coastal storm planning. We have a different presentation around educating the community around evacuation and hurricanes, and we are happy to come and present. and continue our outreach. We do it every year, and we will continue to do so. And we're happy to continue doing that.
So I hope you start tomorrow and you go door to door and get people, get floor captains going.
Wendy, I think Wendy, I'm just, let me speak.
Wendy,
because
they won't. Well said, but it's a strategy to keep the whole.
Michael, can we have some?
I'm muting everybody now because people can't behave themselves.
They sure can't, and it's a shame. It's almost. All right, we're gonna have to go with the all mute. I didn't really want to do that because I know everyone wants to speak, but we gotta move along. Michael, you mentioned that.
No, Robin no longer has a question.
Okay. As Michael mentioned, this presentation and the previous presentation are available on the CB3 website. As a link you can download and study. This is not the end of any discussion. It's just that we're trying to get back on track with this project because we've been meeting on this for years and years of community engagement. So this is more of a checkup to see where we are. And I'm looking at the questions in the chat and we'll try and get them answered at the next meeting or at another community engagement process. I think that's the end of the presentation for the interim flood protection study. So I thank OEM for that presentation, and we're going to move on to the next agenda item. Thank you. Michael, I think the tree presentation or the tree task force.
Is that Haley? Are you on? Yeah.
Okay. Al, are you also presenting or no?
All right.
Yeah, I can give a quick update. Alda Chan with Parks. I'm joined by my colleague Haley Hicks, who's with Parks Forestry. We were asked by the community board to give a presentation or an update on the tree planting task force. This is related to the Side Coastal Resiliency project, specifically the 1,000 neighborhood tree plantings that we have started to do already. This was a recommendation, mostly a great idea by Wendy that we've taken on and started. I know that there are a lot of questions about trees. I recognize what time it is. Today we're speaking specifically about the tree planting task force. Haley's going to give an update on where things are. We don't have a presentation. It's just a quick verbal update.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Haley Hicks, and I work with NYC Parks in the tree planting program. I'm managing all of the tree plantings in response to ESCR and all related community correspondence, including the tree planting task force. I know it's a late night, so I'll be very brief in my updates. So for those of you that don't know, we are planting 1,000 street trees in the area surrounding East River Park, just in an effort to bring more tree canopy back into this area. So a couple quick updates. In February of this year, we held 2 community walkthroughs in CB3, which was just kind of an open forum for community members to learn more about street tree planting and ask questions and provide suggestions. And this helped us kind of focus in on what the community wants to see with these tree plantings. Things like tree guards, flowers, tree tags in the tree beds. As for a planting update, so fall 2019, we planted 319 trees towards the ESCR planting goal. Spring 2020, so as many of you heard, our construction was paused this spring due to COVID-19 and the stop work order. And as a result, unfortunately, no trees were planted in CB3 this spring. However, for fall 2020, we do plan to get back on track with planting, and we're planning about 150 trees for this fall. And the last update I wanted to give was regarding the task force, the tree planting task force. We would like to get our next meeting on the calendar for early September ahead of the fall planting so that I can hopefully provide you with a more comprehensive update by then and just address whatever concerns you might have. And I will email you the details for this meeting. So lastly, if you have any questions about street tree planting, or you want to attend the tree planting task force meetings, please feel free to reach out to me. Michael can provide my contact information if you need it. And I'm also happy to stick around for some questions if I need to.
Thank you for that update and for being brief and just giving us what's going on. One of the main questions, and I think you have answered it, is that we do have funding for these trees and they will be planted.
Yes.
Kelly, can you do me a favor and just, I know I have your email address, but when I try to do other things when I'm running a Zoom meeting, my computer doesn't like that. So can you just put your email address in the chat box and then I'll just forward it to everybody?
Yep, I will do that right now.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask for questions from the committee, although this is a brief update. We will have more information at the September meeting, but does anyone have any questions?
There are no questions, Trevor, but I'm showing you all my cute puppy.
Okay, thank you for providing that bit of happiness. Oh, that was a hand clap. Okay. Is there anyone from the community who would like to ask a question about the tree planting? Okay, thank you for that. Wait a minute, I see one hand. We're going to take that last one. I don't know who that is. Hopefully you can identify yourself.
This is Mary Jo Burke. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, thank you.
My questions are, the trees that have been planted so far, how many of them have died? And what is the maintenance program in place for keeping the trees alive, as many as possible going forward?
So out of the trees that we've planted, which is a little over, I think 400 in response to ESCR so far. I don't know an exact number of trees that have died within their 2-year guarantee period. But when the trees die, we do like a completion inspection and we replace those trees within a couple of weeks after they have been reported dead. So all the trees that have been planted so far should still be in good condition, and they still are within the 2-year maintenance period, where if they do die or fail or are in poor condition, the contractor is required to replace them. So I hope that answers your question about maintenance.
Mary Jo, do you have a follow-up?
I do, yes. Is there a map or something that we can see in terms of where the trees have been planted so we can actually check on them?
Yeah, I have a map that I provided at our last task force meeting of all the trees that have been planted so far for this project. So I'll have that sent out again.
And Michael, can you tell us where that is?
I'll email it to you, Michael, for distribution.
Yeah, we can. We'll have it sent to the district office, and we'll have it put on the website somewhere.
Thanks.
And Wendy, you raised your hand late, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to close this out because we really got to talk about district needs, and it's 9 o'clock. So go ahead, Wendy. I hope it's brief.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Haley, I just wanted people here to know that the 1,000 street trees that were originally promised to CB3 back in last spring, 2019 spring, are now being shared between CB3 and CB6. So we're actually getting fewer trees in CB3 than we had been promised originally. And as a task force member, I recall that earlier meetings, it was you or Nave Strauss who said that those trees that were planted last fall, except for the 2 in Sarah D. Roosevelt Park, were actually part of earlier requests that were being fulfilled by the street tree planting program and not part of this 1,000 trees, that those weren't supposed to start to this fall. So which is correct?
So those early plantings are a part of the 1,000 trees that we're guaranteeing. But I would like to say during those community walkthroughs that we did, we gathered a lot of feedback based on what types of trees we want to see go in and where the community thinks they should go. And we got a lot of feedback that tree canopy should be going in closest to surrounding East River Park. So we did come up with a plan that we would start our surveying right along the perimeter of East River Park and kind of spread out from there. So the majority of the trees will be in CB3. I just can't, I don't have like an exact number to give you. But that is our plan, to start closest to the park and expand out from there with our surveying.
Thank you. And there will be a task force meeting in September where we can go into depth about that and other questions. So thank you, Haley and Alda, for that update. We're glad to see those trees in our neighborhood. So that ends that agenda item. If folks have questions, the chat box will remain open and we'll try and get them answered at future meetings. Thank you. We're going to go into a discussion about district needs. So if anyone who is not a committee member wants to sit and listen to some very dry stuff, you're welcome to do it. Hopefully you can finish this in about 35, 40 minutes.
Trevor, I don't know if he's on or not, but did you want to see if the park manager was on to do his report first?
You're absolutely right, Michael. Forgot about that.
Jamil, are you on? I know sometimes you're on the phone. Hit *9 to raise your hand if you're on the phone. He must not be on.
Okay. Is Susan on?
Yes, she is.
All right.
I'm going to let her talk.
Okay, I'm here. Are you going to put the district needs on the screen?
I just downloaded it because Trevor just sent it to me, so give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Well, maybe more than 2 seconds.
And Ryan, if you could just take notes on this, I will do the edits, with track changes on a Word program. You don't have to worry about that. And if you remember, we discussed this
Okay.
at our last meeting. So this is going over what we've already decided and gotten some answers on, but not all of them.
So if the first section, Trevor, I'll do this with you. I think
Sure.
Between the two of us,
Right.
we'll know what's going on. And so the first section under Parks Recreation, the bullet points, I don't believe we requested anyone had requested any changes or there was any decision for changes in that, correct?
Correct.
So then under the Parks Buildings, for each of those bullet points, Trevor has inserted answers. So I actually think a lot of this can be taken out on the bullet points.
And Kay, I'm just going to say something to Kay. I apologize. I may not have gotten everything about Saturday Roosevelt Park correct because it was getting a little confusing because it was.
There's a lot going on.
No, I'm just saying there was a lot going on with that. So I just want to make sure this
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I just want to make sure because I was trying to make sure that I got everything right about SDR Park. So if you're taking a look, I just want to make sure that because I did change some stuff that if anything needs to change.
No, I sent you stuff quite a while ago and in the notes too. So
yeah, just want to make sure I'm correct. That's all.
Okay, so first bullet.
I'm sorry, Susan. I don't know why it's Sarah Roosevelt Park, the Stanton building. It's used by park workers. It's not under construction and the bathrooms have reopened, but.
All right, so we'll change that.
And
wait a minute, is this? Okay.
Okay.
So we'll change that.
Sorry.
So the first one is used only by parks workers, except for bathrooms that are open for the public, right? Is that correct, Kate? Like you're muted. You're muted.
Oh, there we are. It wasn't letting me unmute. Yes, correct.
Okay, so I think that's how it should be changed. So SDR Street, Hester Building, that is used only by parks workers, correct?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kay. Sorry, that's me.
Yeah, maybe we should just, anyway, parks, the Hester Street building is only used by park workers, yes.
So that's correct. Allen Street Mall, I guess
That's correct. The RFP is still for the vendor.
No, it's
in
correct.
progress.
I'm saying we have to do some wording to, we'll just change, change the wording a little bit.
Correct.
Concessionaire, yeah.
Seward Park Park House, bathrooms are now open and space is being used by the Lower East Side Ecology Center. I don't know if you want to put something in there. The space should be, continue to remain as a community space or something like that.
I don't think the space is currently being used by the Lower East Side Ecology Center. I thought it was being renovated so it can be used by them.
Slated for their use.
Okay.
So we'll change the language to space is being.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've got, maybe we should for this section kind of time date it, because don't forget this is for July 2021. So maybe we should put in language the same at the time of this writing or something of that sort.
Okay.
Same thing. So same thing with LaGuardia. For Baruch bathhouses, I'm going to hope that by the, we should maybe make a note that by the time we actually vote in October to check on whether the RFP is released.
Okay.
And Tompkins Square Park, I guess what you have there is, is correct. So maybe where it says we believe these buildings should be renovated, should all be renovated for use by the community. And, after it says these properties are underutilized in the district, maybe have a sentence there that, we're asking for community use for all of these buildings for, some one sentence, saying what we want to go forward.
Susan, let me back up a little bit. I just want to make sure Ryan captures that because she's just taking notes. So you're saying that we should reword this.
It wasn't very coherent. Following the sentence where it says, according to a 596-acre study, the following properties are underutilized in the district. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should have one sentence following that saying that we want all these properties to be fully activated for community use.
Okay.
So Susan, you're just trying to separate that out. So it says reopen for community use and you want a new sentence that's about.
Yeah, so that there's an ask, there's an action going forward.
Got it.
The comfort station, I would suggest we take that whole thing out because everything's either done or funded or under construction.
You say take the comfort station out, the whole.
Yeah.
The whole section.
Yeah. We got what we asked for.
Okay, so let's take that out.
I'm sorry, but I guess that they are renovating the bathroom on Broome. Never mind.
Okay. Got to celebrate our wins.
Yeah.
Took a couple of years.
We can all go to the bathroom anywhere in the neighborhood.
Recreational use, we left exactly the same. I don't think no one's mentioned any need for any change there. For the rodent section, I sent Trevor today a chart of the number of boroughs in each park, which if you send that to the committee, they might find it useful. And I'd like to put it in the appendix of the district needs statement.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I will send it to.
Okay.
And
So,
should we attach it to this document?
Yeah, that's fine. And that way we'll put the appendix.
Susan, can I ask you if given the MTA dig, should that be in that section, or since I haven't seen it, is it already?
It is not, well, it does have the number of boroughs in SDR Park, and it shows SDR Park as one of the few parks that really still need maintenance and work.
Yeah, just by the time this comes out, that'll be in full swing supposedly, but anyway.
Yeah, so anyway, so there's a lot of crossouts here, so maybe if I just read what's left, it'll help be easier. The rat reduction program implemented in 2017 has not shown success uniformly in CD3, but there has been success in parks. The reduction of rat burrows continues to be at historic lows. The parks most in need of continued treatment are Allen Street Mall 1, the East River Park, and SDR Park. And then I have a table of about 15 parks with year by year the number of boroughs, which Trevor will send you guys tomorrow and we'll attach to this document.
Right, thank you.
I have a question. This is Robin. It seems a little bit like you're saying two things. It's a little confusing, that paragraph to me. It sounds like you're saying it's great, they're at a historic low, but they're not great because it's not working. So
no, what I said, it's not worked in CD3. So if you're looking at the whole community board, the overall rate of rat reduction is not good. However, in both NYCHA developments and in parks, those two areas are very good. The private properties are where it has failed, and the private properties are so bad that overall the number has not gone down. But parks has gone down, and when you see the table, you'll see that parks have gone down in a stunning manner.
So the table will make the sense of that. Okay.
Okay. For wireless access, we just got that information today. And there's actually, we should add one park to the, so CD3 residents would benefit greatly from free wireless access in public parks. Let me just see. Currently available in Tompkins Square and Hamilton Fish. And there's one, do you remember what the other park was?
Alfred E. Smith Playground.
Yeah, so we should add Hamilton Fish Park and Alfred E. Smith Playground. And so where it says still need update on this, you can take that out. The update is the Alfred E. Smith.
Correct.
Maintenance, we're not looking for a substance change, but Trevor has marked this for a stronger language change for maintenance, which will be even more needed by the time this comes out. Community gardens, we have no changes. There is increased illicit drug use. Pier 42, I don't think there's no changes. There's nothing to update really. Still needs money.
Libraries, or you want to handle that? Or
So I actually heard from them today. I sent the request. They're in the process of retrieving this information. So they're on it. I should get it soon. So yes, I'll just substitute the new figures when we get it. That's what I do every year.
okay. So there is one, and Michael, if you could scroll back up on the maintenance section. I think we need stronger language. So I'm going to ask a volunteer to come up with some language for that. Scroll back. And what do you, Susan, just for bullet points, so we can clean up this and get this as close to completion as we can. And this is for the committee members also. I know Parks had talked to us about this. What are we really trying to say here?
Well, I would want to put in something about, you know, looking at the inequities that have been emphasized by COVID and the need for our communities. Someone's taking notes, that'd be good. We'll write it if you'll take notes. And about, you know, the need for our community to have well-maintained open space and the need for public space in our community, something of that sort. And
yeah, I mean, I think there's you know, a ton of examples that we can give if we need to about, you know, overgrown lawns and parks that make them unusable, you know, that provide breeding grounds for mosquitoes, you know, especially now that parks are seeing an increased usage because of COVID and people, you know, escaping to the parks. Trash is overflowing because it's not being picked up, you know, regularly or, you know, or more regularly. And so trash bins, even the big bellies, are overflowing and litter is everywhere.
so what we need to, I think, say is, you know, learning from COVID and talk about the inequities, and instead of having improved conditions at the time of need, they are worse and have an even stronger need for more maintenance, more workers, more programming. Well, I guess programming won't fit here, but more maintenance and more workers.
Yeah, and I think also like this first sentence, I remember when we came up with this last time we updated this, part of this also was about, you know, wasting of funds where they would come into a park, and this happened at Corlears. They came in with, you know, an $8,000 small CPI grant and planted all these beautiful things, but then there was no maintenance plan, so nobody watered them, so everything died.
Yeah, so I think so, right. Plantings and new construction without plans for continuing maintenance is just a loss of money.
Ryan, I know that was a lot to sort of absorb, but do you feel comfortable you took enough information for that?
I think I captured what people were saying.
All right, thank you.
It's not in sentences, it's in phrases, but I think you can.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just to get the ideas. How about if we write it up in the office and then I forward it to you, Michael, since you had a lot of the ideas?
Sure. Yeah, I can help you with the maintenance part. I'm happy to do that. And Ryan, I'll send you the transcript of the meeting tomorrow too. That might help as well.
Great, yeah.
If you really want to read all of this again, I think she's captured notes pretty well from previous meetings. I think she's okay. I've tried looking at the transcripts. It's living hell twice.
Totally off subject. I was in a nightlife advisory board meeting this afternoon that I walked out of. I walked out and slammed the door.
You zoomed out. Peace out.
I zoomed out.
All right. Is there anything else beyond libraries? Because that was the last section we left off.
That's it.
All right. So we are done with this.
Is there anything in the bioswales tree planting section?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Sure.
And we probably should have asked that with the tree task force update, because they included that. They do have funding for it. So we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but there is funding for the tree and bioswales fundings.
So are you saying that there needs to be any change? I mean, it doesn't sound like we're having an increased need.
Well, let's hold off on that. I know that there's going to be a meeting in September, and I don't know if we really talked about bioswales. We really focused on tree planting. So let's see if we can get some information about the bioswales. I know when Steve
just put a note to check for update after the next tree task force meeting.
Correct.
And,
All right, folks.
and that waterfront note, sorry, it was hard for me to follow at that time. I couldn't see where we were in the schedule. So there's nothing to say. You've already identified what's getting cut.
Well, it's not necessarily getting cut. They did. It still needs $50 to $60 million to complete.
Yeah, it's staying the same. It should just.
Waterfront is staying the same. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why it's highlighted red, but it's staying the same.
I think it was highlighted for us to check for updates, which we did do yesterday. So the highlighting should come out.
Okay.
All right, folks, we finished that portion. I don't think, Michael, can you check to see if the Parks Manager is on? If not, we're going to.
Trevor, sorry. Do we want to say anything in here about the return of the compost as it is sort of an institution on the Lower East Side and in that park?
In district needs?
Yeah, I don't.
I think that's kind of a separate thing. If you want to do a resolution on that, you should do that as a kind
Well,
of.
we've done one, I think, and I'm just trying to, I hear you, Kate. I don't know if it's part of district needs,
Well,
but it may be.
Didn't they get funding? The compost program, I know, got funding. I mean, it does involve some funding, but just, you know, as something that has pretty significant community support. And I don't know if it's going to require funding, but
No, I know. I guess this is more of a question about the district needs. Is that something that goes into district needs?
I would say that composting itself is under sanitation, and that's under a different a different committee that deals with sanitation. And you're right, it's something that's incredibly important to the community, but it's not the same kind of district need where we're saying the amount of park space per person and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I hear you, but I do think that it is in part under sanitation, but it actually, the compost itself is used in parks. And I think given especially the commissioner's push to try to get composting out of parks, which frankly I see as probably the future of parks, given resiliency and everything else. I mean, I'm not going to argue it forever. I just think it would be worth a question. To me, it's worth possibly. To me, it is integral to parks, or should be. So.
Could we add something in the Seward Park House building, which is slated for LES Ecology Center, just saying our support for a composting program, and this being a leadership model, just maybe in that context of the Park House?
Support for a program is not a district need. You can everything Kay says is 100% true, but it's not a district need.
I see.
Just where it goes is the issue.
Robin, do you want to make a comment? You've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, I do. I'm curious after that presentation that the temporary flood mitigation can't happen in the district. Would that be a district need somehow through parks to get us some temporary flood mitigation? Because
don't forget, this is for a year from now. This is for starting for FY22 in July 21. So we're not talking about the next year at all.
So we're missing next hurricane season anyway with this.
Okay, so that was, it's not that we missed it. We dealt with that last year.
No, but I mean, I'm just curious if that would be something if nothing's going to be done through the Office of Emergency Management, and what can parks do then, I don't know. That's just a thought.
So that's a real issue for the committee to deal with, but you probably want to deal with that now, not in a district need statement for next July.
Okay.
Let's do this. Since we're going to close this district need.
Sorry, Trevor, you're probably reading my message.
Yes, I am. Sorry, and it's probably pretty obvious that I am. I'm just trying to figure out, because Susan raised a point about it actually being under sanitation, although it isn't a park, and a lot of it's going to be a park. So let's.
Do you want me to think about it and write?
Yeah, let's think about it, because does it really belong under transportation technically? So let's think about that.
I think it's the battle that's going on right now with Parks Department, frankly. Does compost really, is it integral to parks? That's a
but I'm just, it's just who manages it is sanitation. So let's think about that.
And I suggest that you're talking about policy, and this is not the place to talk about policy.
Right, so we're focusing on district needs. So if Christine, you have a question about district needs, because with regards to what Kay is bringing up, we're gonna think about it for a minute. But did you have a question about district needs?
Not so much a question, but more like a comment. I would love for composting to somehow be included in that, because these district needs is about future capital investments, and we couldn't get a straight answer from parks whether the compost yard will be included in a new park, but there's certainly no design. And there's no money there right now to build it. So, I think it would be great to include it.
All right, so we're going to.
This is not the section for capital needs, the budget priorities, where we talk about capital needs.
Yeah, and we'll think about it. I hear you. It's just that we got to focus on the fact that we're doing a district needs statement. But
if I could just say to Christine, this is much more general, that will inform the budget priorities, which we will vote on in October. And, we could vote on a capital need for a composting facility in October.
Great. But, and to Kay's point, I do think maybe one of the committees should look at overall composting, because it is a sanitation thing, but just overall composting and view it as something the community needs. But on that note, let's see.
Trevor, Jamil, I believe, is not on. His phone number doesn't show up as one of the numbers listed. I texted him, but he didn't respond. So
okay.
Manager's report tonight.
All right. So we're going to join the meeting. We're going to let Ryan take attendance. We are voting to adjourn, which is a way of us taking attendance.
I need David Adams to hit *9 to raise his hand, because he's on the phone and I don't know which phone number is his.
I think he's unmuted. I see him.
Okay.
David Adams, are you there? Is he 693, Michael?
I don't know. Oh, there he is. Yeah, he raised his hand. Hi, David.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Ryan, take
him out of order.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Dave. Can you hear me?
693.
All right, so we hear you. We're going to take that as a vote, and we're going to move on. Ryan,
Well, are we voting on anything specific, or just taking adjournment?
We're voting to
adjournment.
No resolutions tonight.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Trevor Holland.
So we're gonna take that as a yes, or in fact, let me ask you: do you vote to adjourn, David Adams?
David.
You keep we're playing. Can you hear me now?
We just need to know whether you're going to vote to adjourn.
Yes, I vote to adjourn.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Sorry, Ryan. Ryan, let's. Sorry.
Trevor.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Trevor Holland.
Yes.
Kay Webster.
Yes.
Yaron Altman.
Yes.
Carlin Chan.
Yes.
Ryan Gillum, yes. Valentina Jones.
I can't unmute. Oh, yes.
Michael Marino.
Yes.
Carolyn Ratcliffe.
Yes.
Robin Chattel.
Yes.
Josephine Velez.
She just screamed yes. She hasn't unmuted herself. But I can see her mouthing yes.
Yes.
Yes. Troy Velez.
Sorry, I haven't unmuted Troy. Hold on, let me find him. All right, Troy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes.
Welcome, Troy.
Thank you.
Troy, this is early.
This is early.
Really? What am I going to do with the rest of my? What do I do with the rest of my night?
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, all.